kick that. He just popped free, and he's gone. One man can catch him. Only one, and that's Frankie West. Not to be. 96 yards. It's a touchdown. Braylon Allen's first of the year.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Mekhi Bernard in the game, and here's a flea flicker, rising with a ton of time, got a receiver wide open, and it's caught for a touchdown. Dalton Kincaid got behind the defense, and Utah is on the board first.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Texas brings pressure. Duggan backpedals, slobs to the end zone. Wide open. Johnson, touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Shovel pass. Here's Sanders. A burst of speed. Rocket Sanders steps on the gas. A foot race. Touchdown. 73-yard liftoff for Rocket Sanders.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Gabriel pumps, looking deep, airing it out into the end zone. Stokes is there, got it, touchdown Oklahoma.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Thursday afternoon, and we will get into the Big 12 preseason media poll that was released today. And I have to tell you, it almost mirrored what I had that I gave out last week, but that means that I think maybe it looks complicated and then maybe makes sense in many ways if you just look at who is where and what they have coming back, et cetera. And again, TCU and Kansas State last year, no one had TCU in the mix. Baylor and Oklahoma State, maybe Oklahoma State, but not Baylor. So it's been that way, and we'll see what happens and who might be the dark horse who rises from being maybe picked seventh or lower. But we'll get to that. First of all, thank you, MC Gusto. Royce sent us a letter, and here it is. And what this is, without just like it's about us, it's about this family we have built at 365 Sports. He posted this on UCFsports.com. Justified shout out to 365 Sports YouTube. If you're new or an old knight, there are so many reasons to get behind these guys and listen, subscribe to their channel day in and day out, articulately discussing the Big 12 in such an insightful and educational manner. Big-time guest, historical talk, and so we really appreciate it. Thank you very much, Royce. MC Gusto in the chat room wanted to say thank you to you right off the top, spreading the word about what we do every day on 365 Sports.
Yeah, it was really nice. I hope you come out and see us all when we're in Orlando later. Very excited about that trip. And, the UCF fans have responded well. Our numbers last month, I think Orlando was on our top 10 markets of people, like more people watching Orlando than did maybe even in Waco. So we're big in O-Town, which was always a life goal of mine anyway. So really happy that people in Orlando or UCF fans across the country are picking us up.
Yeah, no, really appreciate the kind words. Big shout out to all of the UCF fans out there. And if Twitter hadn't gone into whatever weird state it's in right now, maybe I'd have seen more of the conversation. But I know we talked about UCF the other day, and I saw like one mention, because I don't check like my Twitter notifications often enough, and sometimes I miss some things. But I know we were talking about UCF the other day, and I mentioned that, and I don't know how I phrased it, but like the main reason why they're being looked at as a team that could slide in is John Rice Plumlee and the fact they've got their quarterback back in comparison to the other three that are all breaking in new guys. And I think that's a major reason why is because Plumlee's a playmaker. I think Malzahn's another reason why. But I did have somebody, and I saw like one tweet about it that was like, hey, we also got some defense. We also got this and that. And it's just nice to have that back and forth. And I don't know, like I said, if there was any more to it than just that, but I appreciated him or her interjecting and saying, no, we got more than that. But, yeah, my point was just kind of like, yeah, but Plumlee's the reason why you go like, okay, that's the starter for you along with Malzahn. But they do have, more in their arsenal, and I'm excited to see how that all comes together and is equipped when they take the field as a Big 12 team here in just a couple of months now.
All right, we're going to discuss this over the next few minutes, and you, the fan base, if you would have voted, we've seen some of you that have mentioned what you would do at 1 or whatever, but it took time. We mentioned that. Paul was busy for 31 days, and so he didn't do the preseason media poll, 32 days. I forgot that extra half day when he flew back to get on Texas time. But had you done one, I did mine. I published it, and then also the young studs we have a part of 365 Sports to put it up on a reel, like 14, 13, 12, and counting down. And I did not know, and I the response I got was, for the most part, maybe one or two that were like, you're a little bit low with so-and-so. I think Oklahoma State, like Barry Campbell, thought I had them too low. But here is the preseason poll on our right. Thank you, Garrett. Number 1, and let's go through the 14, and then we'll go back, pick and choose how we discuss it. Number 1, Texas. Kansas State 2. Number 3, Oklahoma. Texas Tech is 4. TCU and Baylor 5 and 6. Followed by Oklahoma State, UCF, Kansas, Iowa State, Brigham Young, Houston, Cincinnati, and West Virginia. The same 5 or 6. I had 1 through 6 the same. I had 8 and 9, or 7 and 8 flipped. I had Kansas 10. I had Iowa State 11, Brigham Young 9, and then the other 3 I did have in some particular order: Houston, Cincinnati, West Virginia. So maybe it does make sense, although to me it was a very difficult thing to do. And I'm glad I did it now, and interesting to see the results today.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the bottom 3 at all. I'm curious to see, BYU has a veteran quarterback in Keaton Slovis, but he's bounced around, so they're hoping this is finally the spot where he can kind of flourish, and maybe the offense built around him will allow him to do that. And we talked about this a little bit last week when we did this. I think 6 might be a little high for Baylor. I just have to see this group together win games in tight spots to put them that high. I'm not going to put them lower than 8, but 6th is about my ceiling on Baylor, and 9 would probably be about my floor. But I just need to see something more from them. And TCU at 5 makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're going to have probably 9 to 10 new offensive starters, although the offense will probably hum well along given the system. But still, you got to establish some chemistry and time and all that. So most of it I feel pretty good with. And look, this might be the last time for a few years that Texas is going to be picked to win a league. And not because they may not be good when they get to the SEC, but they might not be good enough to be better than Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama, or the teams that are on top of that league right now. So that remains to be seen. But if they've ever had a chance in the last decade to win the Big 12, this is clearly the best one.
Might be the last time Oklahoma was picked as high as 3 for a little while, too, if you really think about it. Maybe not, but there's certainly as much of a chance of that, I think, when you look at the league and, who they'll be contending with. It's been pretty much a layup to be 1 or 2 or 3, on a down year. But, I think that, that's going to be interesting for both teams to see is where they kind of fall, because they pretty much just popped up in the top, part of the league pretty much, I would think, almost every year. Oklahoma certainly for the longest time was your pretty much automatic number 1 to put up there. So interesting to see, just the amount of teams for the first time. It's so big league compared to what you've been dealing with just 10 teams where it's just kind of dot, and you're done. And now you got 4 more who there's a lot of unknowns about to try and fit in and see, where exactly they mesh versus others. It was a fun exercise to do, and I'm sure it'll become easier, as we get more acquainted with those teams. But I think the most interesting thing to me off top is you've got 6 teams receiving a first-place vote. I mean, Texas clearing away the top vote getter, which I agree with because I had Texas number 1 as well. K-State, Oklahoma, I think you can see the arguments obviously for K-State and for Oklahoma as well. I mean, they lost a bunch of close games last year. They had some, injury issue there with Dylan Gabriel at, more than one occasion. It gets hurt in the TCU game. Maybe that doesn't change anything. The Texas game, I mean, the game would have been closer than 49-0. I mean, he would have done more than Davis Bevel did in that game. It doesn't get hurt in the Texas Tech overtime. Maybe they win that game. And you look at it, and it's like, and I wrote about this today, like they're not that far away from winning 9 games last year if like a couple of things go differently for them. So it's not like, I mean, it was an historically bad season from the standpoint of it was the worst one they'd had in over 20 years. But it was nothing compared to most teams' worst seasons, and it wasn't that far off from being a little bit of a down, but not much of one, right? So I do think if you want to believe that with some retooling this offseason, they can bounce back and just have a little bit better luck and be okay, then they could compete for the top because they certainly got some good coaching and good talent. Texas Tech, I know there's a lot of love for them right now, and I don't buy them as a sleeper at this point. I mean, they've been talked about way too much to be a sleeper, but I know they still are somewhat of an underdog compared to the 3 listed above them. But, yeah, I don't have any surprises that they've been mentioned. TCU, I think a very good chance that they could just roll on along. And, and then Oklahoma State's kind of a surprise there.
Which of the ones to you are too low? Well, you said Oklahoma State's a surprise. You think they should be lower?
No, I think it's surprising that somebody voted them first place.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. Wet Blanket brought that up, I think, or somebody did Oklahoma State with the first place vote.
Sorry, I was just trying to get through all the first place teams, and like I said, there's a number of them. There's 6 teams that got first place votes, so I just found that most interesting. I don't know if that's ever happened.
I'm not sure if that's ever happened. So I then just put in the chat room, you know who won the conference? Kansas State was voted 5th last year. TCU played for the national championship. They were 7th last year. And if you look back at Baylor in 2021, very similar. Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State were 1, 2, and 3. Texas was 4. That's kind of about where they ended, where they were. But Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State might have been the 3 most disappointing teams in the Big 12 last year.
Maybe so. And by the way, on Texas Tech, I don't think Joey McGuire is ever going to sneak up on people. He's a loud guy. Like, you're not going to have a program that's doing as many big and boisterous things as they are and then sneak up on people. They're just going to maybe might be a little underestimated by some, but I think that Tech, I don't think they're a dark horse anymore in that. I agree with Craig. But, the Big 12 is kind of the league of parity right now in that the Pac-12 was like that too last year, where there were a lot of teams that really had a good chance to win the league at different points and, win a game here or there, win a close game, and then you might have a different 2 teams that are in the championship game. In the Big 12 last year, it was no different in that, you had a lot of teams that were in it for a good stretch, and then it thinned towards the, in the last month or so.
Last year, if you look at the preseason poll, which again means nothing other than fodder in its discussion, Baylor, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State did not meet those expectations. Kansas State was above them. Texas was about where they were. Iowa State didn't. They were 6th. West Virginia was 8th. Texas Tech was 9th, and they were obviously in that top 3 or 4 when the way they finished the year. And then Kansas was better than number 10. David Williams, as a diehard Longhorn fan, I would still not predict Texas to win the Big 12. Over the past 13 years that UT has not won the Big 12, they were probably the most talented team at least half of those years. I'm not going to
I don't think there's much debate in that. I mean, given their recruiting classes and all of that, I mean, it might turned out different on the draft pick side of things. There might have been others who developed better and put more guys in over time. But, I mean, as far as top to bottom talent level, based on what we're told via the rankings and all of those types of things, absolutely. Oklahoma could maybe be number 1, but they would be at worst 2, at worst 1B. So, that's a very fair point. I think that's hard for people to I think it's a struggle for people to look at it, though. It's like, who's the best team? Well, if all comes together, who's got the team with the most talent, the team with the talent that matches with the coach, and I think they have that. But I know they've had that, like you said, 13 times in the last 13 years, and it hasn't necessarily, worked out in the end. But I don't know. I have less questions about them than I have about anybody else. And I feel like if it is going to be their year, and I'm sure this has been said ad nauseum before too, it really does feel like this is their best chance. It's not a team of destiny. I don't think there's one of those. And if there is, then we'll find out in the season at some point, kind of like TCU or K-State last year. We didn't really know that until the season started. But I do think they have a lot of terrific pieces and an actual belief in what they're doing and some real confidence, not that fake bravado just because of the logo. They've got actual reason to believe, like, no, this thing is actually, like, we got something here. And I just get that feeling from them. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's why I'd roll with them. I roll with them. And the fact that, TCU lost a lot, Oklahoma's still in a little bit of a will they, won't they be back on top? I'm just not quite ready to say, like, yeah, it's automatically theirs again. They got the mulligan, and Brent's going to have them back, winning the trophy right away. There's just a few too many questions about others.
All right, so there's the media poll. A lot of you responding. I have no clue about Iowa State. Why would someone vote Oklahoma State? One, new quarterback, new defensive coordinator. They lost several key pieces on defense. Cyclones should use the freshman quarterback immediately. So there's a lot of that. And there's already
may have to.
Yeah, Wet Blanken said Kansas State, UT, and TCU would be his top three. So, and then some mentioning Gary Patterson, no longer an analyst, who basically was the quasi-defensive coordinator, with all due respect. He's out, and you wonder if that loss affects them on the defensive side of the ball, even if it's just a little bit, because he was a brilliant X's and O's guy when it comes to defenses and being able to game plan certain teams. Let's see, from BU, Patrick, defense was better under Patterson, but that will take a step back. Offense was okay, but they did lose the best running back in Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, they're not perfect by any means, and I do think there is something to say about, Gary Patterson's role and what he did last year, but I also don't want to assume too much and act like that was all his doing. I know he deserves some credit, but there were others involved. So until I see otherwise, I'm going to think that they also can coach defense as well, Pete Kwiatkowski and his staff. But, no, that's absolutely a fair criticism. Losing Bijan, that's a fair criticism. But, I mean, unlike a lot of other teams who might lose a Bijan, they've got, 2 5-star running backs in the backfield that are marinating, or high 4 stars, whatever they were in the end. I don't think that you just reload Bijan, but you add in – about as highly rated a guys as you can get. It's about the best way outside of getting like a 5-star transfer you could have replaced him. You've got every other position on the field on offense that is all back or enhanced in every way. So that's why, I can say, yeah, Bijan's gone and that'll hurt. But they just win a different way. They don't rely on the run game as much, and maybe this is Ewers throwing it around to Nayor and Whittington and Mitchell and big tight end Sanders.
But they have the offensive line now with all these big humans, as they tweet out. Why not still be able to run the football no matter? But Bijan, how special he was.
He was great.
One of the highest NFL draft picks at running back we've seen. Not the highest, but among the highest in recent years.
8th overall.
Yeah.
So they'll probably be, I'm sure a noticeable drop off at certain times, not only because he was just so great, but you're talking about guys who've hardly played, and it's also Roschon Johnson too, who has a really good chance to be a really solid NFL running back based on his build and running style and all the things that he does. So yeah, they're not just losing guys who were talented, they're losing experience. So I would think that that's where the gap would come in, but Texas, look, just under Tom Herman, Texas never really had a problem at running back other than Tom forgot that they existed and would kind of just run the ball with Sam Ehlinger all the time. And that was kind of their issue, is that if they were down to that, then they weren't using all their weapons. I think it's going to be a weird thing that when you look at Texas this year, if you look at it in reverse, when we're sitting in 2024 going, this is why they won the Big 12 or this is why they didn't, I think it does boil mostly down to if Quinn Ewers is opting out early for the draft, it probably means Texas had a very good year. If Quinn Ewers is coming back, it probably means that they did not have a very good year.
That's a good point. And then again, however they play, but that means he was very solid.
Because I think the reason they did not contend down the stretch for the Big 12 title last year and that they fell out towards the end was Quinn Ewers could not throw them to a win last year. It wasn't his fault necessarily they lost, but if you could take Bijan out of the equation and and force them to have to throw it 45, 50 times, then they weren't going to win that
the
game.
Oklahoma State game, and there was the thought that he might have had some sort of an injury, which is fine. But that game, he threw the thing like a wild young stallion pitcher who could not get to the strike zone. He was everywhere, injury or not. Earl Carr. Earl, thank you for the comments about the show earlier. I'm a Brigham Young fan, but I agree with them. At 11, too many questions that need answering. Defense is one of them. So, Earl, thank you very much. West Virginia guy, 56. I see Neil Brown getting fired during our bye week. And there's a lot of that chatter in the chat room, too.
Yeah, there's reason to believe that BYU can be a bowl team and perhaps, flirt with more of the upper half of the standings. But you're right, they do have some questions. You turn over on defense, you got a new quarterback, you got some new weapons to have to, all assimilate and, make one team that can go out there and do it week in and week out. And you also add in that team's now doing it in a league for the first time in a long time and a bit of a different grind, even if they had pretty competitive schedules. So, yeah, there's enough questions to slot them down a little bit lower, but they're going to have a lot of room to grow over the next few years, that's for sure. So, yeah, very interested in all four of the new teams and where they ultimately end up. I think, the Iowa State thing, you just kind of glossed over them, and I know there's 14 teams to talk about, but them being at the bottom is not really that big of a deal or probably surprising to most, but, it's just kind of strange that Matt Campbell had all this fire, and they were playing in a Big 12 title game like 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, then they take the step back last year, and instead of feeling like, all right, it's all going to rebound, there's just not a lot of faith in them. So I don't know if that means that they're going to surprise people because they're still a buzzsaw to have to deal with. Like, that's still a grind of a game. It doesn't really matter who you are. It's going to probably be low scoring, and you're going to have bumps and bruises when you leave the stadium. So that's still a grind of a game. But, yeah, they've kind of lost some of their footing that they had gained, and I don't know if they can recover and surprise some people or if that's kind of bound for where they're going to be, which would be, pretty significant story given how hot of a name Matt Campbell's been over the last few years.
Could they be 21 Baylor?
I don't know about a run like that, but I think they could surprise people.
Somebody could. By the way, from Cole out of Austin, Texas won't replace Bijan, but they can recreate him in the aggregate with the offensive line and running back pool they have, which is kind of what I mentioned in a way earlier.
And I do think Roshan's got to be mentioned too. Like Paul brought him up, but yeah, you got to mention him as well because it wasn't just Bijan. Roshan was awesome, and so they lose two really good players in that regard. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm feeling the same way. If they don't need a Bijan Robinson at running back to accomplish what they need to accomplish, they need some guys who through the aggregate or whatever, Cedric Baxter and Jonathan Brooks and. Who am I missing here?
The kid from Canes.
Jaden Blue.
Canes more of a Swift Army knife for them. The kid from out of Houston, he left high school a year early. He came out early or did not play.
Jaden Blue.
Yeah, that's what I'm sorry.
Yeah, so they're going to be pretty solid talent wise, but how does that translate? Yeah.
All right, from Tony Clifton, go ahead.
I have a question for the West Virginia fan who said, I expect Neil Brown to get fired in the bye week.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1-4 would mean they've beaten Duquesne and lost to
Pittsburgh,
Penn State, Pitt, TCU, and Tech. So that would make them 1-4 at the bye week.
Sounds about right.
Okay, but if they're 2-3 at the bye week and they beat Pitt, is he fired?
I think it depends on those other games. Like if you go into the Big 12 and you get slaughtered, I mean, maybe that changes things. Pitt would be a nice win, but I don't know enough to
be an emotional nice
carry through the rest of the season, right? Like if you were to beat those teams, you turn around and like get beat by 3 touchdowns by your Big 12 teams in the first couple of attempts, and I think everybody would go, this is not going to go well the rest of the way. But how early might they do that? I don't know. It is a fair question. Unfortunately, that is a question you have to wonder about. Hopefully for West Virginia's sake, he wins a couple of those early games, beats Pitt, for example, maybe gets an upset early on, and he can kind of, just stem the tide a little bit. But it's tough. The crosshairs are on him. There's no doubt about that, and he knows that probably as well as anybody. So he's going to have to go out there and play and hope things fall right.
Tony Clifton. Bijan's a Tucson South Point High School grad. The next 5-star from that said school is Rushing, who is committing today, and Arizona from Tony. Thank you very much for that information. Is in the hunt. We'll see how that goes. So a lot of discussion. Appreciate all of you. David Williams, an advantage UT has is the talented depth they have at running back. We've mentioned that. Equally, they have 8 offensive linemen, good enough to start. We mentioned that. It was really aided when they got all 5 at one time a couple of years ago. And Banks, of course, what appears to be an automatic, he's going to be a part of the NFL. Now, what he does say, and we've said this before, Coach Sark has to balance the run and the pass, and at times Tom Herman struggled with that, and obviously at times in the second half, Texas struggled with that too.
I think another thing that I take into consideration, not really for the full big picture, but at least in evaluating sort of what could go wrong? Like, okay, running back, what's your depth like, right? Your depth, that's the big question for a lot of the new schools, if not all of the new schools, because that was a question for every school whenever they joined the Big 12 initially, was could they get the right depth, especially on the line? So for those 4, I think that's going to be a big question. But I think in talking about depth with Texas is, yes, they now have it in a lot of key places, and perhaps the most key places at quarterback. I mean, you look around, and if something does happen to Quinn Ewers, it's not necessarily to Arch Manning, but you got a Malik Murphy that's sitting right there, for example, or you have an Arch Manning that's sitting right there. So, I do agree that their depth across the board is about as good as it's probably been in quite some time from quarterback on down, and that's another reason why I give them a couple extra points, but they're not the only one that's got quality depth, and clearly they're not the only one who people think have a chance to win this conference. I was surprised to see a first-place vote for Oklahoma State. I would love to hear the reasoning behind that. I do think that they have as much of a chance to surprise people as they do to be a bottom team, because I don't think any of us really know quite what to make of them until we actually see them go out there and play. Like, Alan Bowman's capable, but we've also seen the other side of that. So they're just a very mysterious team based off of kind of the way everything fell apart last year. But I wouldn't underestimate them. I mean, I think, Gundy's a good coach. He's been around longer than anybody in this conference for a reason.
How many years in a row have they had a winning record? Is it 17? Is
it something insane like that. Yeah,
that's that's not a fluke. That means that's a trend, man. That's long term. Here's one question that was asked by Smalls, and then we got a break because we have a guest coming up at 3:30, Zach Barnett, who wrote a story about UT in the media poll and Big 12 conference earlier. How much of a disaster would it be if, in fact, both Texas and Oklahoma met for the Big 12 championship? We heard that same question last year. It was never close. Oklahoma faded immediately. Texas tried to climb back into it. Would it be a little bit difficult? Sure it would be if either one of them get in. But this conference is deep. It's competitive. You never know. But I'm sure Texas and Oklahoma, you'd hit a lot of chance about SEC like you did back in the days when Texas A&M and Missouri left for the SEC.
Yeah, I think it would sting a little bit, but not as much as it had happened the last couple of years as they were, as they had announced their way out the door. Since they've announced it, neither one of them have played in the game. So, it's the four teams that have played, Baylor, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Kansas State have all played for the Big 12 championship. So I think that kind of salved the burn a little bit more. And if it winds up being Texas and Oklahoma, again,
so what? I mean,
right now, so what? They're on their way out.
Yeah, and good for them if they get there.
Good for them if it worked out, but I don't think it would be as bad as if it had been the last. Like this,
I think last year would have been even tougher.
Yeah.
Not the one on the way out, although it would sting. But I think last year, if they both had kind of run the table and met in the Big 12 championship game, because it was such a, the wound was still there from the announcement in the summer of 2021.
I think it would be really tough image-wise to hear, chance of SEC as one of them or, going on to win a title. I think that would be, a tough pill to swallow for anybody who's, a fan of the brand, and to hear two teams, chant something like that would be not a nightmare, but wouldn't be fun. But I think at the same time, you could kind of smile at the other side of your mouth knowing, okay, thanks for the big ratings pop at the very end, delivering us one last, 10, game.
12 or million.
Yeah, so they'd still get something out of it, and, it'd be a worthy send-off. I mean, Oklahoma in particular, having won 14 Big 12 titles. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have a team win 10 straight. Name a team. Any team win 10 straight, no matter who it is. They're not going to have 14 total. Like, that's how ridiculous of a run they were on. So if anybody was, a worthy adversary or worthy team to play in that game, it would be Oklahoma. And, Texas as in a rematch of Red River would be a big ratings draw, I would imagine. That means both teams are probably pretty good and maybe fighting for a playoff spot, which would be under the Big 12 banner. So there's kind of that weird part to it. But, yeah, that would be a tough pill to hear SEC chants showering down as the Big 12 championship game was going on. But you get a little something out of it no matter what.
Dustin, I'm late to the show, but as an Oklahoma State fan, I'd have them lower. I would have them higher if Sanders was still there. Too bad the offense wasn't built around him. All right. When we come back, Zach Barnett, Football Scoop, he'll join us today. He wrote a story, in fact, earlier about UT. Also, Ari Temkin, who is involved with the Big 12 Radio Network, one of the co-hosts with Dave Archer, former Iowa State quarterback, at 5:30. We'll have Andy Staples now up on 3.com at 5:10. Paul's Top 5, Craig's Off the Radar, Max Olson, The Athletic, and Mickey in the 4 o'clock hour. And this is 365 Sports. So earlier today, I've been telling you that I had an appointment at Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress. I walked in the door, and, man, I got to tell you, just I guess from habit, I was like, man, why don't I just push it back? And yet he helped schedule the appointment so I could get some of the dental work done that I need before things get very busy, which really load up in August. So I walk in, I sit in the chair, and I'm told, okay, they're going to do 3 things. He's going to do 3 things today. One, he had to replace a crown in my back right. I've told you about it, got chipped. Okay. And then he's going to extract this back left. I was like, whoa. And then there's also a filling. So that was a great way to start today. But with him, I trust him. Now, what he did today was get rid of the old crown. He put a temporary in, and I'll go back in a couple of weeks to have the new crown done. And then we'll work on the filling a little bit later on down the road before football season starts. I cannot tell you how amazing that staff is. They are phenomenal. Dr. Steve Childress is elite. And I know, Paxton, I use that word a lot, but with Dr. Steve Childress, I will. He talks you through everything, the game plan, and also how he's going to make things better. And he did it again today. It's an incredible place. If you need dental work or you're looking for a new place to get your dental work done, from teeth cleaning to root canals to extractions and crowns, Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
Make this the summer sales event going on now at Allen Samuels. Shop our large selection of new inventory and get amazing deals on new Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Chrysler minivans, or a sporty Dodge. Shop AllenSamuelsDCJ.com or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas. And always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors. Baylor Athletics Trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Zach Barnett, Football Scoop, joins us. Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak in the middle, and this is 365 Sports. Zach, thanks for your time. And when I reached out to you about a segment you mentioned today, and then you also mentioned that you had written an article about Texas, and of course you do a lot of coverage of everything college football. So we went through the media poll with Texas being 1 and then Kansas State 2. Your thoughts about the media poll? Did you do one? Were you a part of that as well?
No, I did not vote. Have voted in the past, did not vote this year. But if I had a vote, I would have chosen Texas, partly due to faith in the Longhorns and partly due to lack of options elsewhere.
Zach, this is, obviously their last year in. And do you think that this is a team that can also contend for the CFP, or is this a team that can certainly contend for the conference title, but they might be still a year or so away from CFP good?
Well, I think this year's team is going to be better than next year's team. Just due to where they are in their roster cycle, they could have 12 guys. Like if you told me this time next year they have 12 guys that are going into NFL training camps, not necessarily 12 guys drafted, but 12 guys going into NFL training camps, I wouldn't bat an eye. They're going to have a very veteran team. You know, they return everyone on offense outside of Bijan and Roschon, and so that's going to come at a cost. So they're skilled position players. Their secondary is going to take a hit going into 2024. They're veteran across the defensive line. Not young, but they've got key vets on the offensive line. So I think this is a year that if they're going to do it anytime soon, this is the best opportunity.
As for their soon-to-be, SEC counterpart there, they've typically they haven't, had to wait since 2009 to be atop the preseason poll. Oklahoma's been on top of that bad boy plenty of times and followed through with it. But last year does leave, some questions, Zach. There's reasons when you look at the roster and the game results from last year to see how they could have been much better and things just didn't break their way. But obviously a lot of, newness there. How do you think they adjusted that with Brent Venables in year number 2?
Yeah, I'm sure they'd tell you they like their defensive personnel a lot better than they did this time last year. And I certainly think they're going to be improved there. I don't think they're going to be top of the conference or anything like that, but they're going to be improved. And I think you can make an argument that the most important person in the program is Jackson Arnold. Like there was no hiding from the fact that they were screwed if Dylan Gabriel went down. And of course he did for the better part of 2 games, and we saw what happened. So if he were to go down this year, then they have some insurance, which I think allows them to be a little bit more cavalier in how they use him, in the run game and really, get the most out of him. Because Dylan Gabriel, he's not an All-American, but he's a solid college football quarterback. And I think he's going to have to be the straw that stirs the drink for them, because their skill talent is frankly as average as I've seen an Oklahoma team in a long, long time.
Zach, you mentioned earlier that you would have had Texas 1, and I had them 1. I released my 1 through 14 sometime last week. And then you mentioned because of perhaps not default, but because of, well, there's not one that just jumps out at you. Does the logo of Texas affect that decision? Because it has in the past with many of these polls, and we've seen in the end how many times they've underachieved.
I think I think yes and no. I think if you put all the Texas players, if you put them all in Oklahoma State Cowboy uniforms or West Virginia Mountaineer uniforms, you put this exact team in Mountaineer uniforms, they probably wouldn't be number one. But at the same time, I think the logo, that logo carries a lot of baggage with it in a way. And a lot of unfulfilled expectations. And in my article, I actually went back and looked, and it's not like Texas has been picked to win the Big 12 every year and they're just falling short. Like, in general, the Big 12 preseason poll is pretty accurate to how Texas finished. Like, the Big 12 media has a pretty clear-eyed view of this team. In most years they were picked to finish fourth, and they finished fourth. It's not like they're picked to finish first and finished eighth or anything like that. So, all that to say, I think there might be some people that picked them to win because they're Texas, but I think there might be other people that picked against them just because they're Texas.
Were there any surprises to you in that, or like people you thought were too low?
I'm not going to say too low, but it had to be a slap in the face for West Virginia to come in 14th out of 14 with Neil Brown entrenched there going into year 3, year 4. I apologize, I don't have that off the top of my head, but a new AD there. If they actually finish 14th, I can't see any way Ren Baker brings him back. To be below, a transitioning Cincinnati program, to be below a Houston team that, is not Big 12 ready. That roster is not ready to compete week in, week out in the Big 12. To be below them is a cold dose of reality for the Mountaineers.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. That's got to be a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. But with those new 4, who are you expecting? Are you a UCF guy like a lot of people seem to be as far as who might make the easiest transition? Is it BYU because that schedule? I know you just said it's definitely – your answer's not going to be Houston. I know that. But where do you kind of fall in the new 4 and who might make a wave or two in this first year?
I default to UCF just because I trust John Rice Plumlee more than I trust Keaton Slovis, the transfer by way of USC and Pittsburgh. John Rice Plumlee is just one of those guys that I think a lot of us have a soft spot for in college football. That just he's not going to be an NFL quarterback, but the guy can make plays happen on a college field. And I'm a believer in Gus Malzahn. UCF has all the ingredients that you need to build a contender. They have, obviously they don't have Florida all to themselves, but as a Big 12 school, they have that identity. So if there's someone that's going to come in and wreck shop in year 1 or surprise people in year 1, it's probably the Knights. And also BYU has Oklahoma and Texas on their schedule. I think it might be back-to-back weeks. I know it's both late in the year, so that's going to be a tough draw for them.
Who is this year's TCU or 2021's Baylor?
I'm going to the popular answer is Texas Tech, and who can decry what Joey McGuire's doing with that roster? But I'm going to go against the grain a little bit and just say Oklahoma State. I'm a believer in Mike Gundy. The guy is a ball coach with a capital B and a capital C, and what I think what he's done, what he's going to do with his offense moving forward is, I think, going to be a really interesting response to the 3-3-5 defense that has taken over this conference, much like the spread offense the Air Raid did 20 years ago. I think you're going to see Oklahoma State play multiple tight ends on the field all the time. I believe they said they're going to go under center, which is I hope they check the conference bylaws to make sure that's still allowed in the Big 12, and just try to really counter these 3-man fronts by expanding the line of scrimmage and making these 3-down defenses have more gaps to fill.
Yeah, it'll be easier to pick an all Big 12 tight end at the end of the year. So that's always been a tough thing to do when, like, there's one guy who has 50 catches and the next guy has 4 at the end of it.
They had 4?
4 catches for 6 yards and 3 TDs is usually the stat of the second guy in that on that team. Zach, moving across the country, the San Diego State situation was really interesting, and we had a writer on who covers them exclusively last week and said that their initial letter to the Mountain West was kind of a shot in the dark because they didn't know anything. And then you've seen kind of the things that have gone back and forth and will wind up, eventually somebody's going to write a check for some amount of money and this will all go away. But just from the outside looking in on how awkward this continues to be and a ripple effect of the Pac-12's disastrous to this point media negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think someone dug this up. It wasn't me, but it was July 5th, 2022, that the Pac-12 was announced that they were going to pursue a new TV contract. And I believe if you went out west and asked everyone in the Pac-12, their reaction, if they'd still be in search of a new contract on July 6th, 2023, they would have said no, absolutely no way. And yet here we are. So, I mean, I just have to believe that there's been back channel communications between the Pac-12 and San Diego State to be like, hey guys, we're gonna have it done by X date. You're good. Just hold on. But San Diego State's actions tell us that maybe probably hasn't happened. Like you wouldn't maybe be acting in the way that San Diego State is if you had more information. So maybe a year from now everything works out and San Diego State's on their way to being in the Pac-12 at that $17 million price tag. But, I mean, who really knows with this, the way the Pac-12 is run?
Well, my question, and I asked this yesterday, and Craig was trying to ask this as well, all of us were, why would San Diego State send the letter if they had not yet been invited?
I think because conference realignment, it works in the same way that coaching hires work. No one is invited to join a conference until they've already joined it. And no coach is offered a job until he's already accepted it. So I think that's that's the way that song and dance works in those circles.
Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. We did have this conversation. And again, thanks for your time, Zach, and anytime we can get you on. So you also follow the coaching changes. I mean, it's not fair to discuss it in a way, but there already has been, even in our chat room. Who in the Big 12, if you put 1, 2, or 3 in order, are on the biggest hot seat, and would Neil Brown be 1, 2, and 3?
I think that might be fair at this point. I mean, Dana. I'll say this: there were rumblings about Dana in November or in December, excuse me. I had a conversation with a coach. Flat out asked him, are you going to be the next Houston head coach? And he was like, I've heard that rumor, but you'd think at some point someone would tell me. So there was chatter out there about Dana, and that's a situation at Houston where, if Tillman's happy, he's not, then Dana's going to be entrenched there. If Tillman's not happy, no matter what the number says on the contract, there's going to be a change there. And so it's an interesting situation. I wrote a piece back in February where Dana lays out all the things, all the different ways that Houston's kind of behind in joining the Big 12. And he's not necessarily wrong. Like their fundraising, their giving is well behind, even the other schools that are joining the Big 12 from the American and plus BYU. And their facilities, they're fine, but they got to keep playing catch up. And they have the city of Houston, their fan support is just not there, not at a Big 12 level. So, I think Dana was telling the truth, but I also think he was buying himself some cover. Like, hey, y'all, you asked me to go play in Big 12, and I need Big 12 support. And so, if Houston goes 4-8 or something like that this fall, I think Dana, his worries could be tossed aside, and they could go bring someone else in there. I can definitely see that happening.
It all depends on how he reacts if it's a tough start, right? Because he is not afraid to go popping off. And in fact, we've had Chris Pesman on, the AD. They kind of know that. It just all depends on and who wouldn't react maybe in an angry way if things start to go south a little bit because of the pressure of winning and joining the Big 12. I would think, though, Zach, a year in the conference at least he earned that or not, and see how things go. And so at least you get 2 years in the conference.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I mean, Houston's not in the Big 12 because Dana Holgerson's their head coach. Like, they'd be in there regardless of anyone. But at the same time, it's a tough ask to go for anyone. I think Nick Saban will have a hard time winning in the Big 12 with Houston at where they are right now. So I think it defaults back to how, Dana handles that with his interpersonal relationships with people on campus. How he, interprets whatever happens to them. I think you touched on that before. If among the coaches that, I'd want to show up to work at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning after a bad loss, I feel okay if Joey McGuire was my boss. And, it wouldn't be fun, but we'd get through it. Dave Aranda would be high on my list. If Dana was my head coach, I might call him sick that Sunday. So, he can be, pretty cantankerous. So that's the big wild card here.
Zach, keep it up. Thank you very much for your time. Footballscoop.com. Zach Barnett with us here on 365 Sports. We have other college football analysts, columnists, etc. Max Olson will join us. Ari Temkin will join us. And also Andy Staples will join us today on the show here on 365 Sports. One of the questions I'm having fun with with Cobb. He said, so what is Baylor's record against Texas A&M? And kind of like, what's what fans do. And I responded probably about the same as A&M's record against Texas. Maybe not as many wins, not as long, but it's a one-sided affair. It's always interesting when a team, and I love you, man, Chris Cobb, for bringing it up, but I don't know the history, but I know it's pretty close to that.
Well, mathematically over the same amount of time, it probably is. I guess the difference would be A&M finally in the 80s and early 90s was able to beat Texas more than once in a row, which was not something that
is once in a row.
One time they could do it. They did. R.C. Slocum. The reason R.C. Slocum is the greatest coach in A&M history is he's the only guy who ever flipped the script on Texas.
Yeah,
ever the history of that rivalry. So he was the only guy who ever really truly flipped the script on him. Baylor just since 1979 or so just could not beat A&M at all, and they had 1 or 2 wins and a tie.
Yep.
And it was just a really bad stretch of 30 years.
But they were awful, really, from the early 90s until they had, of course, they had the overtime win with Sean Bell and the receiver from Killeen. Who am I forgetting? Ziegler. Dominique Ziegler. All right, the chat room is rolling. And it's fun, and we appreciate that. And we're not done. This is 365 Sports. Discover Woodway had their parade. In fact, I saw part of it on 4th of July on Tuesday morning as I was driving to go play a round of golf at Bear Ridge, and people were getting ready. It was a little bit later, but there you could see the trucks and all the flags, and it was awesome to watch all of that as they were starting to get ready. So that's gone. But never forget 4th of July. Now, the acoustic night, which I've brought up before, is around the corner. When I first mentioned it, I said, man, that's a couple of months from now. July 19th, 6:30, acoustic night, an evening of stories and songs at the Carling Bright Arboretum in Woodway. Acoustic night featuring Thomas Zobra, Gabe Lee, and Caleb Cottle. Join them. Evening of stories and songs, Carling Bright Arboretum, Whitehall patio gates open at 6:30. For more information, by the way, parking available at the pavilion at the Arboretum or also at City Hall and the Woodway Family Center. If you want more, if you are interested, it's admission free. But more information, go to discoverwoodway.com.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Why did you get into this business?
we kind of were born into it, and it's been for several generations. Our family's been in the beef business, the ranching business, and we've specifically got into the beef business back in about 2015 when me and my son decided to form Texas Beef House and sell directly to the public.
Aaron, everyone knows about Wagyu and how elite that is when it comes to beef. What separates you from anyone else that may do this in this type profession?
We selected out Wagyu mainly because it's such a quality beef, and it's consistent. Some beef, some breeds, you may have a good animal every now and then, but Wagyu produces really consistently good beef every time.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Here we go, this Max Olson segment on Thursdays, usually right around 4 o'clock. He joins Craig Paul, and I'm David Smoak. Max, I've already seen the responses, the stories. They are part of the athletic.com on UT, the preseason poll with the Big 12. Your thoughts about what you saw as it was released?
Yeah, wasn't shocked that it was Texas. I did not, full disclosure, have a vote in this, so I ballot together on this one, but wasn't shocked it was that it was Texas just based on kind of the name recognition of the players they've got coming back, and obviously we saw that yesterday with the all Big 12 team. I thought the sorting on really 1 through 5 is definitely 1 through 6 is definitely interesting though. I mean, I think you can make an argument that Texas Tech should be higher than Oklahoma. You could certainly make an argument that we're sleeping on TCU even with what they with losing 8 NFL players off last year's team. And honestly, fellas, based on the Big 12 we've watched every year, if I told you like the Big 12 title game is going to be like Texas Tech versus Kansas, you'd probably say like, that's possible, I guess, right? I mean, it's still hard to know what to make of these new teams, and obviously like there's probably going to be some sleepers in this this kind of like 5 to 10 range that have really good years.
Oklahoma State got a first-place vote from someone who's very confident in Mike Gundy, and look, he's got the track record. But is this kind of the height of the weeds that Gundy likes to lay in and let people doubt him that he's got a middle-of-the-pack team?
Yeah, I think so. That they feel like certainly there's a lot of things that have to come together for this team, but I know they feel pretty good about Alan Bowman coming in from Michigan. I think they feel pretty good about the transfer portal haul that they had to replace, what they lost. There was obviously a lot of attention on some of the guys that they lost this offseason, but I think they did a pretty good job of replacing them. And, really the X factor here is going to be Brian Nardo, the new defensive coordinator from Gannon University. And, he's really trying to implement an Iowa State style odd front defense. Do you have the personnel for that? Do you get enough reps in the off season and in September to really build a really solid defense for Big 12 play? I think that's going to be the challenge. But I think Oklahoma State will be, right in the mix here, just as they were, middle of last season before all the injuries they had.
Max, do you think people have a hard time trying to figure out Baylor this year and the way the last couple of years have gone from the highs of, Big 12 title, Sugar Bowl a couple years ago to just whatever that was all out of whack last year? They haven't shown to be a top-level team in the last, based on last season. And there's a lot of question marks. I feel like they're one of those teams, kind of like maybe in Oklahoma State, that it's just kind of hard to peg them right now. How about you?
Yeah, I think that feels right. I mean, were there any Baylor players that you guys were like dead set on, like, wow, they should have been on the All Big 12 team yesterday?
No. Yeah.
I think that doesn't mean they don't have players that can help them compete for conference title or anything like that. It's just with some of these teams, you kind of go down the lineup and you're like, okay, it's a bit more unproven going into this year, and you've got a lot to kind of figure out. And yeah, I think that there's, it's kind of the nature of the beast with the schedule that these teams play in this conference, that you're going to end up in a lot of close games, and somebody has to lose those close games. But yeah, you're right. I don't think that, especially considering at this time last year, we were talking about Baylor number one on this list. It certainly doesn't seem like they're getting kind of like the same kind of like scrutiny in a positive way this offseason in terms of what they're bringing back.
Max, this is a fair question, and it's one that I ask myself. How much different would the media poll be if the Texas players and team roster coach had a West Virginia or maybe a UCF jersey on?
Well, did people, like, the year that West Virginia was loaded with Will Grier, I think people still voted them pretty high, right? Second or third or something like that. I mean, the funny thing is that Texas is not, we've always put Oklahoma at the top of this, like by default. And part of it is because they won 6 Big 12 titles in a row. But I mean, Texas has not been number one in this thing since they were voted first in the 2009 poll. And that year they actually, played for a national championship. So good call by the people that voted on that one. Of course, I was a young child at that point in time, right? But, I think there's a, sure. There's always like a real skepticism here when kind of Texas automatically gets slotted into a preseason top 25, just based on the recruiting rankings and things like that. But I don't know, guys. Like you go through the roster there. I mean, they legitimately do have like 15 returning starters from last year's team. I mean, I understand it's you can point to Sark's resume, you can point to how much Texas has overpromised and underdelivered in terms of the talent they've had over the past decade. But this is kind of one of those years where, like, gosh, there's really kind of, especially in the last year in the Big 12, there's really no excuses. Like, any game they lose besides Alabama, like, there's like not going to be a lot of patience for, I don't think. Like, I think this is a team that it's got to be Big 12 title game or bust.
Yeah, Max, I have a hard time seeing them finishing, less than 10-2. Honestly, 9-3, I guess, would be the floor for them. So that may not get them in the top 4 of the CFP, but that's certainly probably this year for sure, especially if one of those losses is to Bama, puts them in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, and, look, there's a lot of, even with Texas, there's a lot of stuff that has to go right. I mean, certainly Quinn Ewers has to play his ass off for Texas to be playing for a Big 12 title. And, he's still a young guy who I think, is going to show a lot of progress from last year. Certainly, the combination of Bijan and Roschon was really special, and there are talented players in that running back room, but you got to find, the right balance there and a workhorse and all of that. I mean, there's still pieces of this that are unproven. But, I think the continuity they've had overall as a staff and the ability to, add some pretty good players via the portal to maybe improve some of these positions where they're a little bit lighter. Like, I think from a roster building standpoint, it's hard to knock what they've done so far. Now they got to actually go out and win with it.
We just had somebody bring this up a couple minutes ago, or a few minutes ago, but West Virginia dead last. Okay, that's fine, but that's behind all 4 new schools. Is that a severe level of disrespect, or do you think that's about right, actually?
I don't think it's right. No, I don't think West Virginia is the worst roster or worst, starting 22 or however you want to judge this stuff of the 14 schools. I think that there's, I think it's just going to be a real thing, and I'm not knocking the newcomers, but ultimately, and I've had this conversation with Dan Holgerson before, who's about to go through this again. He learned this when he went from the Big East to the Big 12 at West Virginia. You can be very successful in the league that they were coming from if you've got a pretty strong starting lineup, and it's a real star, a couple NFL players. I think to be successful in the Big 12, you really do need like 40 plus really good players. I think that's what it's going to take. And so it's going to take, from a long-term standpoint for Cincinnati, who's rebuilding with a new staff, for the rest. For BYU, for Houston, for UCF, I think it's going to take time, to build up a program that can really contend. And so I'd be kind of inclined to slot them towards the bottom. And I think West Virginia figured some stuff out at the end of last season, and obviously real question marks and a legitimate hot seat situation there. But I wouldn't just assume West Virginia is worse than that.
Last thing, Max, and maybe still have a couple more questions left, but you wrote the article in late May about Matt Campbell and how excruciating it was in 2022. Quote, it was gut-wrenching in every way, shape, and form, unchanging, trying to figure out, right, what he was doing after he was basically the golden child. And the last couple of years have been disappointing. People still feel like they're going to be in that maybe at the bottom, like 10, 9, 8, 11, whatever. How much did last year eat at him?
Oh, yeah. Iowa State, it's been nothing but positivity in Ames, Iowa from the start with the Matt Campbell era. This is a staff and a team, the teams they built that have achieved so many firsts in that program, and you have to kind of keep that perspective. But certainly last year, they start 3-0, they finally beat Iowa, and then the wheels totally fall off. They had more injuries than they've ever had before. Certainly the quarterback play in going from Brock Purdy to Hunter Deckers wasn't up to the standard. They had no run game. Defensively, they were one of the best in the conference and one of the best in the country, and just offensively couldn't get it going at all. I think there's real optimism that they've got someone really special in Nate Shieldhouse to run the offense now. He's been on this staff for a while, coached the running backs and the receivers, and is now coaching the quarterbacks. And I really think is a future star in the business. And so I think they feel really good about that. They overhauled the offensive staff quite a bit, and I think they feel like and they absolutely love the freshman class they brought in. I think they're going to be playing a lot of young guys this year. I was curious to see where Iowa State got slotted in this, but I think it's going to be this is probably more of a grow year than a contending kind of year. But man, I think they're heading in the right direction. From losing a bunch of really talented, best players they've ever had. They've got to develop a new crop of those guys, but I think they feel pretty good about where they're heading again.
Max, Greg, thank you very much for your time. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. Get yourself back to work, and let's get going.
I'm going to see you next week?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
You will. We'll be right there, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on Wednesday and Thursday. Look forward to seeing Max Olson along with everybody. Yes, sir. Thank you, Max. Appreciate your time. David Williams on the chat. Man, the chat's great today. It always is, but it's really just so focused on so many things because we have football to discuss. It was mentioned earlier that the Big 12 Conference routinely is difficult to evaluate. Adding the 4 additional teams to the conference, I think it's almost impossible to determine how teams finish, is what I said when I released my 1 through 14, which I wasn't going to do because I thought it was just okay, why am I going to put my hand out the window and slam it into a telephone pole? Because of exactly that, even when it was 10, much less now with 14.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's an overall lack of knowledge of the 4 teams for everybody. Even if you know a good number of things about them, you still don't know how they're going to acclimate right away. So there's, it'd be one thing if it was like 1 or 2 teams. It's 4 teams. That's almost half of what the Big 12 was size-wise a year ago, right? So that's pretty significant when you're talking about, that many new members. And, I mean, every team's got plenty of reasons to be confident that they'll be better than expected or about what they're expected, or plenty of reasons to say, they're going to take a step down. It's going to be a fascinating year. It really is. I don't know if it'll be this way every single year, but it might, because once you take Texas and Oklahoma out of the equation, well, they're what? I mean, I know that Texas has not been picked at the top since 2009, and Oklahoma was picked at the top pretty much every single year for quite a while there. So take Oklahoma out of the equation. There's a team that's been in the top 2, maybe 3, nothing beyond that. I can't imagine. And then Texas, I don't know what their worst slot would have been, but I can't imagine it was any lower than 4, if even that. So that takes 2 of the top, perennial or the top annual, list vote getters off the list entirely, and leaves you with 12 teams who are all about equal, really. I mean, one might have one, TCU's got the playoff card right now, but
Cincinnati's
got the playoff card, but I mean, those don't trump
there's about to be 12 teams, so
none of them are among the blue bloods.
Right, yeah.
They all have had their sporadic and sometimes more consistent, but none of them are in that as far as thought.
Baylor and K-State can say, well, we've won the most Big 12 titles now. We've each got 3, and Texas has 3, and then Oklahoma has the 14. But, I don't place TCU or, K-State or Baylor at the top because of that, So, there's everybody's accomplished something at some point. BYU's won a national title, but it was also, 3 decades ago. Everybody's had their moments, but nothing here so recently that they've become so dominant that when we slide into the next phase, it's that team's clearly the team, and they're going to be the one that leads. You see that conversation of who's going to lead. It's going to be somebody depending on what year we're talking about. It could be look at the first place votes. All those teams minus OU and Texas are pretty much every year going to be right there in the mix, some combination, and then the newcomers as well.
Well, the original Big 12 had 3 teams that had dynastic runs at different periods in their history.
Yeah.
In Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas. Now, all 3 of those teams will be gone. And now you have no team. There's no team in the Big 12, and this is not a knock. This is just a fact. They have no teams that have ever had a dynasty that have been a legit.
Bill Snyder was trying to get there, and it ran out of gas.
Yeah, but they were not. Yeah, they were not a dynasty. So,
and we're not talking about 1930s TCU.
No, right. I'm talking about.
Don't need to. You talk about 2022 TCU. Maybe starting a dynasty.
If that happens, good for them.
A decade-long run of owning the conference and being at the top of college football. None of them have had that, and that is the way that most of college football is going to be now, with a 12-team playoff, with transfer portal, with name, image, and likeness. All that parity is going to be more across the board.
And
now,
even realignment affecting blue bloods that are in the stacked conferences.
So there will be teams that run away and hide for a while, like Georgia. Oklahoma ran away and hid with this conference for most of the time. They won 14 of the titles. But I think that if you look at the teams that are left or that are coming into the Big 12, there's not a dynasty among them, which makes for what's going to be a league that's going to be very different almost every single year.
I agree. And what will be fun? Well, who will be the 21 Baylor? Who will be 22 TCU? And there will be somebody, whether they get to a championship game or not, somebody will probably do that among those who were ranked perhaps in the bottom half of the Big 12 media poll.
Well, and when we mentioned 22 TCU, let's also remember 22 K-State, who actually won the Big 12.
But weren't they picked 3rd or 4th last year?
Were they? Okay, I wasn't thinking about it from that standpoint.
They were 5th. They were picked 5th. Okay.
I wasn't thinking about it from that standpoint. More like, I don't think that they were like a hardcore favorite coming in, and here they came in, and none of us realized what that championship game was going to amount to. A team sitting there playing for the playoff and a title, and then the finish that we got, and it actually turned out well for the Big 12 because they got another New Year's Six team. Granted, K-State got shellacked by Bama, but they still made the Sugar Bowl, and you still got TCU in the playoffs. So, yeah, that was an unforeseen title game for sure. I don't think anybody really had TCU K-State pegged. But
when Oklahoma State lost to Baylor in the Big 12 championship game, Baylor played the Sugar Bowl, and they won against Ole Miss. Oklahoma State played Notre Dame. Was that in the Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah.
So that's been a couple of years back-to-back where they've had two teams in the New Year's Six type or names of bowl games. That would be good if they could continue to do that.
But not in the playoff.
But not in the playoff. Yeah. No, not in the playoff. All right, thank you very much to Max Olson. Mickey is on vacation, so Ari Temkin, who's one of the hosts of the Big 12 Radio Network, will join us at the bottom of the hour. We'll have a couple more things to get to, and we will. And this is 365 Sports. New facility, more than twice the size of the old facility, Pioneer Steel and Pipe, pioneerboys.com, allowing them to carry new inventory, higher quantities of inventory, in much more organized fashion, although that was always something that they could find what you needed, get it to you immediately so you could start your project, whether real estate, commercial, or what it might be. Location may be different, and it's on Loop 340 and also Highway 6 east of 35, but the handshake agreements, the relationships with customers, not just buying or selling something, you or them. Coach Aranda, they've brought this up before, Pioneer Steel and Pipe. Person over player, they feel the same way, that same philosophy when it comes to the customers they have. Standard long lengths and tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat. They now carry several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut, so that means you don't have to spend time getting it cut, taking it to somewhere else, or you're doing it yourself. 2,500 square foot showroom, over 1,000 new products in stock, welding supplies that are new, hardware is new, do-it-yourself components for the weekend warrior, or if you are a professional contractor. They are a family business that's been in business since 1943. Bigger, better, faster, and stronger with the same values. It's pioneerboys.com.
The future's bright. The time is now. College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
We have crunched the numbers and also dissected the Big 12 media, the preseason poll. I saw Jim Williams, our good friend, former television exec, who said they're talking football. Isn't it fun to just to discuss that and look at maybe ahead? We can do that every day. We do it at times every day, but at least there's something here for us to digest. And then go maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, maybe a month or so. I think it's probably more than a month. The AP and coaches polls will come out, and we can look at those too.
We'll have all the media day polls. It's just the Big 12 today. We'll have the
SEC
PAC
and everyone else.
And everybody. So that'll all be coming down the pipeline, not to mention, whatever, stories spring up because of a quote or, a line that a coach delivers that lands a certain way, especially at SEC media days. Like, what was it last year's Jimbo and Saban, right? That was the whole to-do. So, yeah, there will be plenty of that kind of stuff coming down the pipeline. And, there will be realignment, too, because of the simple fact that, I'm sure it'll get brought up at ACC media days at some point or another, at least in these various coaching interviews. Even if that has settled down, it'll be a topic of conversation for the Pac. And I'm sure it'll be brought up next week for the Big 12. If I was the Pac-12, I was thinking about this the other night. If you could announce the media deal on day 1 of Big 12 media days, how much of a little would that be after the way the last year has gone?
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it appears they'll have one ready by next Wednesday, but if you really wanted to just kind of, Brett, you like playing the game? Well, here's one right back at you. Drop that bad boy on day 1 of media days for the Big 12, and,
that would take up a lot of the conversation.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
You're
Maybe
not,
I'm evil, but that's just,
Yeah, you're not expanding. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. But, that, like, my point really being is that will, certainly be a conversation at some of these media days as well.
All right, let me ask you this. At the Big 12 media days, will there be anybody that covers the SEC at the media days in Arlington? Because the Texas and Oklahoma media will be, if it's Nashville, at the SEC media days.
Well, there was already some of the OU and Texas people covering SEC spring meetings.
The ADs and spring meetings, yeah.
So, that will be a certainty. I think, actually, I've seen some Oklahoma guys who have already, maybe some Texas, too. I don't know. Maybe that we're going to go still to media days for the SEC, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're going to go back-to-back. So, and that makes sense. I mean, there's going to be talk about them at SEC media days and just the onboarding and all of that. So, yeah, there will definitely be some crossover. Beyond them, there won't be talk about any of that. I would think that the talk's going to be mostly for the Big 12 about the league. Of course, one of those storylines will be the last go-around for OU and Texas. But beyond that, I don't think they'll be mentioned much. And, yeah, there will be a sprinkling of realignment, I'm sure.
Okay, I've got a question that just popped into my head randomly because you mentioned Jimbo and Saban and their fight last year about it was, Jimbo got mad because Saban said, the whole class was NIL money. And Jimbo, wanted to, rest on his, I'm a really good recruiter. What if he had been like, you know what, I'm a damn good recruiter, and hell yeah, I'm using NIL money. It's legal, man.
I don't know why everybody still acts like it's not. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Yeah, it would, honestly, To me, it would be like after they invented like toilet paper that didn't hurt you, that wasn't like didn't have wood chips in it. If somebody walked out of the bathroom like, oh, he uses real toilet, like regular soft toilet paper, like, yeah, man, I don't have a pine cone in my butt. All right, it's better.
Yeah.
Like this is working. We don't have like we can take the veil down. If he had just reacted of like, yeah, it's unfortunate that Nick has to pretend like it's not happening at his school or that it's worse that it's happening here. But yeah, we're certainly doing it. We have alumni that are enthusiastically giving. We encourage them to continue doing that. And yes, it's working for us, so I'm going to keep doing it.
But it doesn't hurt to get a few more million.
I don't recall what his exact, responses were, but yeah, that was a prime opportunity, if anything, to rally the troops even further and say, like, yeah, we got a damn good collective and we're going to be one of the best in the country and our terrific fans are going to ensure that. And yeah, you better get ready because, like he could have said any number of things and shot back and been right because, yeah, what are we pretending like that this isn't really going on? I mean, we ripped the veil down. Why are we pretending that the Wizard's still back there and we don't really see what we're seeing? I mean, it's just come out with it. Everybody's got NIL. They've got collectives, some to a greater extent than others. And you're damn right, A&M and Alabama and name a school. All of them are doing what they can. If Baylor or TCU or West Virginia had somebody pony up $10 million, they're not going to let's not talk about, like, yeah, and they're going to go use it, and they're going to get the best players available, just like everybody else does with their donations. And, yeah, I thought we all kind of understood that's the way it is now. And, yeah, so it's weird. I agree with you. They still act like it's the old days.
Who among those who are not what you consider, and I get kind of tired of the term blue blood, but it fits. Who among those who are not a part of the royalty of college football have done the best job of embracing NIL?
Well, Texas A&M is not royalty in college football. I mean, they've not won a national title since 1939. They don't regularly contend for the conference title. They're not royalty on the same level that other people are. Now, look, they certainly have money, but that doesn't make them a blue blood.
Let's take I get that. They're not a blue blood. Who among
they're blue blood with money, like when it comes to the money,
the
blue
facilities,
bloods,
the money. That's a story that was written last week about, okay, why the hell, in fact, has it not translated into more? Because it's always been less. Who would be that's not USC, Ohio State, Michigan, most of the SEC?
Texas Tech.
I was just going to say that.
I would say so. I think that they've embraced it, and they've also said, not only have they embraced it, but they've also said, look what we're doing, and they will let you know about it. And
well, why? Because they use it to rally the troops, just like Jimbo could have done with the Saban comments. Have been like, yeah, we have a collective, and yeah, we're using it to pay young men and help their family. Like he could have really done a number on Saban if you think about it in hindsight. But yeah, Texas Tech, every player plus walk-ons getting tens of thousands of dollars, and that walk-on isn't just. I mean, I'm sorry, and I don't mean this as a negative in any way, shape, or form. But we know what the intent is there. It's not to reward the walk-ons and, make their lives better. Like there's some element of that, but we're all adults. That's to have as big of a roster as you possibly can.
Yeah. If you have 20 scholarships left, you can have 35.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's smart, it's strategic, and maybe it's what puts them over the top of other Big 12 schools. We'll have to see on that. But yeah, because of that reason, I would say Texas Tech. Now, it's not something that I follow super closely where I'm like, this team's NIL is awesome and versus, but they're ones that immediately jump to mind as far as a non-blue blood. And I'm like kicking around while I'm talking here. I just maybe don't know enough about like what the ACC collectives are like to know how well.
I don't know what Ole Miss is doing. Yeah,
I mean the way that Lane Kiffin talks about it, it feels to me like they're not where he wants them to be because he does kind of
he'll fire up the troops a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that's what he's trying to do because he'll compare what A&M is doing to what they're doing, and he'll say, well, we can't spend with them. So I wouldn't say they're there yet. I do think that I think he knows that they could if they wanted to, and that's what he's trying to say.
And I think he also knows that there's two more about to join who are going to jump right ahead of them in line.
Ahead of line.
And so you start to look around, like, yeah, there's probably a need for more collective support in general, and everybody would want more, especially swimming in that pool. But now you add two big old sharks that are about to join, and if you're Lane Kiffin, you got to go like, something's got to give here, so yeah.
Chris, Super Chat. Guys, I know it sounds, and Chris, we appreciate it. Guys, I know it sounds absurd, but I have heard, now I don't know if there's any kind of whatever out there, the Saudis were interested in college football. What are they not interested in? How concerned should people be that they reach a deal with the Pac-12 for exclusive broadcast rights? One, I think the Saudis are interested in everything. And if that happens and you're the Pac-12 and you could feel pretty good about it, I mean, if that can help you get what you want and even more.
All right, but I'll say this.
Now, this is just hypothetical.
Right.
I've seen a couple. I even Googled it, Chris, when I saw your super chat.
David Upper wrote a column about it on The Athletic about what if they did. I don't know if that's probably way far down on their list. They want to get into professional sports first. That's where they want to get into. I wouldn't be surprised to see them. I mean, look, they're trying to get into the.
I don't think they want a conference. I think they want all of it.
Yeah. Or, I mean, they bought their way into a couple of teams here and there and some other professional sports. But, okay, Stanford and Cal did not want Baylor to come to the Pac-12 because they were a religious school. Are they going to stand? I mean, now, granted, Baylor's not bringing as much money as the PIF will, but are they going to really stand idly by and have people go like, you didn't want Baptists in the league, but 9/11 you're good with? Like, okay.
How much are you worth? How much can you swallow and or turn your head and cough?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably low on their priority list in theory. I mean, it could certainly happen. I think, the Pac would probably be the most receptive to it, actually. Just seem like, I don't know, like they would just be probably a good candidate to need a big dose of money like that would be like all over that part of it. I also think politically, like the Baylor thing, I don't think that's just a religious thing. I think that's a Southern Baptist thing in particular. So I don't know that really like hinders them, like the whole religious side of that compared to the Southern Baptist part of Baylor, for example. So, yeah, I don't know how much of a hindrance that would be. But, yeah, I think, though, like here's where I kind of stop with it is if you're going to take the big swing of, entering the college football game, which I would hate to see that. Like, let's I know you probably look far enough. Everything's owned by somebody who's not American or whatever. Like, I get the world that we're living in, but can we just even pretend for a little while or have it be as close to possible as we can that it's still an American sport run by American people and all that? I feel like that would be like the straw that broke the camel's back would be college football getting infiltrated with that money and all that sports washing or whatever you want to call it. But I would think if they were going to do it and make that investment, it wouldn't be for the Pac-12 necessarily. I feel like wouldn't you take the biggest swing possible? If you're going to go get the PGA and you're buying, pro sports franchises, would you not go for the luxury line? And all due respect, I wouldn't expect them to buy the Big 12 either. So that's actually the part that makes me go, no, I don't think it'd be the Pac. But all the rest of it, yeah, sure, it could happen, I guess.
If they have a list of every sports thing that they could buy, I would think that college sports are down the list.
I would think
because,
so, yeah.
Again, pro sports are, look, they're trying to give Tiger Woods and Messi, like those are what they're trying to buy. Like they tried to buy Tiger Woods and Messi, and they told them no, That's how it is. They bought the PGA essentially. They're trying to get players to come and play in Saudi Arabia in the soccer league. They're trying to get in the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NHL. The NFL will be an interesting thing because the NFL has been very serious for a long time about every owner being an American owner, but also billionaires like more money, so that could be one of those things where this is different.
I will be Stanford, Cal, and the PIF and whatever. Even Kim Coulter, I can't even imagine.
I just can't. I can't because
and we're not saying it. We're not reporting it as a question that was asked.
No, I just don't. I don't see it as the highest priority on their list. I don't put anything at all past them because of what they're trying to do with all this unlimited money that they have. But I don't think that'd be a high priority. And then I do think that you would have to, if you look at how badly it's gone for Jay Monahan's at the PGA Tour, we've heard a lot more from a lot of colleges about how they feel about how things go in other parts of the world than we have from the PGA Tour. And the fact the PGA Tour didn't have to say anything about that ever, in fact, playing events over there until it became a fact that the players were going to take money and leave. So, Jay Monahan's never had to talk on world issues until a year ago. But
how'd that work out?
Yeah, but places like Stanford and Cal and you name a university, they're always doing it.
One question from Dud Dundee's: wouldn't it be against the law for them to have anything to do with state schools? Now, I guess you're talking about the PIF or Saudis. I don't know. I'm not going to act like I know, so I don't know. I don't know what the rules, the laws, whatever that might be.
Well, I mean, look, if they bought if they had a media platform that they had and bought the media rights, then I think you're already probably funneling it through what would be an American shell company anyway.
Control of schools is impossible. Control of media deals is not. That was from Sir Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Chris, thank you very much for the super chat.
They're not going to run
response.
Stanford or Cal or none like. But like as far as controlling a league and TV deals and all that, I mean, I wouldn't put it past anybody. There's a lot of money flowing through that. But yeah, it's an interesting. I don't know about fun to think about them running like a college football league, but it's an interesting hypothetical and worth asking because who the heck knows what kind of road we're going down right now with all that ownership and changes galore in terms of how sports are operating.
Yeah, could they buy ESPN?
Yeah, absolutely they could.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Honestly, it's about. I've seen this brought up, and I don't know that everybody will love hearing this, but I've seen this from the Pac-12 side from time to time on the braggadocious nature of the Big 12's on ESPN, and the Big 12's on Fox, and meanwhile ESPN's laying off thousands of people throughout the year. And it's like, how much of a gem is that going to still be? Like, is that still ESPN, the great ESPN? But I still feel like when you're talking, cable still matters. I don't care what anybody says. You can tell me about 10, 15 years down the road, but as far as right now and for the foreseeable future, it still matters until it doesn't. And so I do believe there's still that security there, but I see where the argument comes from, and I know why the argument's being made, because you're trying to make them look lesser. But there is something to be said for the future and streaming and how profitable an ESPN is right now in terms of their cost-cutting measures and all of that. But the Big 12 locked in their deal. The SEC locked in their deal. Most other conferences have some sort of a deal with them. So from that standpoint, I think it's a question that's interesting to look at, but it's not that far down the road yet to think that ESPN's jumping the shark when it comes to college football broadcast and things like that.
No, I think ESPN's problems are not just it's Disney as a corporation spent a decade buying a lot of stuff. And
a few years ago, they were buying everything for like 5 times the price tag. And
and so
they've lost millions of subscribers. They're trying to do the straight-to-consumer thing, right? Direct-to-consumer thing now. But they have, compared to when they were the baby in the late 70s when they first came on the air, and I would sit there and like, wow.
They're not doing direct-to-consumer yet. That's the big theory from Marchand that they will, or Aurin, one of those two, that was what eventually will happen is they will launch direct-to-consumer, but that's still a work in progress. But there is the belief that will be inevitable here in the next, less than handful of years.
I always thought, and I could be behind the curve on this, but I always thought what ESPN was when it first came out was really, it was for someone like me, all of us, it was the go-to. I'd watch the Sports Center, whatever. But it almost as if they got too big. They had too many wings, I shouldn't say in the White House because that's a common thing going on this week, but they had too much. Like they got to be too large, and you wonder sometimes where could you find this or this and this, and sometimes we battle that with who we are. Is it how much can you branch out without losing who you are and the core of what you do?
Yeah, I think
the politics and the fact that the things have changed when you had them on Channel 27.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of reasons. But.
Yeah, but I mean they bought like a ton of stuff, and a lot of that like
contracts, right?
Yeah, contracts like you're talking about ESPN with contracts with media rights. The Disney bought. I mean, when you talk about buying Star Wars, Marvel, Indiana Jones, like all these things that they own now, free and clear, that they bought straight outright, that now have to turn a profit for them every time they do something with it. So every time they make a comic book movie, every time that you put a league on television, it has to turn a profit for you. So yeah, the NBA is probably going to do that for you, but I don't know about anything else, how it's going to spin other ways around. So yeah, they've got a lot that they've got to cover up for, and they'll probably figure out a new way to do it. But yeah.
All right, it's 4:38. Go ahead. Oh, technical. Oh, we're off. Is that it? Let's take a break. This is 365 Sports.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton. Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into 365 Sports. Welcome back, welcome in, what have you. Time for Off the Radar, Tuesdays and Thursdays around 4:45. And this isn't as fun of a segment during the summer, I have to tell you. There are slim pickings when it comes to a lot of the stories because, well, it's sort of a, like right now, or what I should say, here in about a week with the All-Star game, that is the deadest time in sports. No Major League Baseball games, colleges are over, all the other pro sports are done. So we're right on the verge of that right here at the moment. But there's a few things still ongoing. For example, yesterday the Mavs finalized their trade for Grant Williams from the Boston Celtics, a deal that also included the Spurs and Boston, obviously, but a 3-team trade. Celtics got multiple second-rounders. Spurs got Reggie Bullock and an unprotected Dallas pick swap. But Grant Williams, that was a note from the NBA. Excited to see what the Mavs can do because, man, there's a lot of pressure on the shoulders of Mark Cuban and company right now with Kyrie and bringing him back. But that was a note, I guess, somewhat locally. Spurs, Rockets doing their thing respectively as well. But as far as like some – go ahead.
I cannot keep up with the NBA.
Oh, it's impossible. That's why I'm not going to dwell on it.
Not only on draft night, when you're interviewing a kid because he got picked by the
crazy.
Timberwolves, it's already been traded to Orlando, but it is, and there's only, 13 or so guys on each team. Maybe the transactions aren't as many as I think, but the signing trades and all that really make it complicated.
There's a big flurry. I really wish I could have seen what would have happened. We could have seen what would happen if they'd pulled off the draft night trade and gotten DeAndre Ayton there in Dallas. And maybe that's not completely off the table, but I don't know how the Suns are going to pay all those guys. But maybe it's just a 1 year they go with that lineup that they have. But the NBA offseason is really intriguing and interesting. This year there's not like huge free agents on the market like sometimes there are.
There's not.
But there are some big trades going on. But, it's hard to follow. Excuse me.
So like I was saying, there's, some little notes and things like that are coming out, but I still was able to scrap enough together for an off-the-radar segment here. And so let's start off with a college football note. How about former Florida quarterback Jalen Kitna? Remember that name? The son of John Kitna, who was a longtime NFL guy, quarterback coach, has gone on to coach in the high school ranks and, seemed to be doing pretty well for himself, and obviously has a son that's a big-time recruit, ends up signing with the Gators, and you think that life would be going pretty well, and then all of a sudden I don't know if you guys recall kind of what y'all's initial reactions was, but you see like a headline about a player getting kicked off a team, that doesn't necessarily raise major eyebrows. When you see it was due to child porn charges, you're like, what in the heck is going on here? And that's exactly what happened last year. Now, Jalen Kitna got served with 5 felony child pornography charges, and as a part of a plea deal, those got dropped on Wednesday. According to the Orlando Sentinel newspaper, he pleaded no contest to 2 misdemeanor counts of disorderly conduct, was sentenced to 1 year probation, although that could be reduced to 6 months. And as a result of said plea deal, he will not have to register as a sex offender, will not have to serve any jail time. So you talk about... I don't know what you chalk that up to. I don't know. The grace of God doesn't seem to fit when you're talking about these kinds of things, but somehow or another, he is, outside of the probation and outside of the public embarrassment, and obviously his college football career you'd think is dead and over with, but most of those charges dropped. He did release a statement saying that he wanted to apologize to his family, his friends, those that care about him. He talked about the support throughout the entire ordeal, and said the hardest thing is seeing how it's affected them. He said he's learned valuable lessons that have been very helpful, and he's looking forward to applying those things and moving forward. Now, he'd been arrested last November, late November. He had apparently shared some images of sexual abuse on Discord and told police that he remembered having shared a couple of pictures, but he thought that they were legal because they were online, which... I don't really buy that, but you can kind of okay, but does anybody really buy that? No, I don't think so.
Based on the legal system and the loopholes, So what, I ask you a question. Is he registered?
No,
I just said he's not going to be registered as a sex offender.
So I read Edgar Thompson, who we have on the show all the time, that covers the Gators very, very, very well. I read what he said, and he put up, for what it's worth, the digital forensics they did on his computer and his phone and all these different things, that was the only time he had ever sent anything or posted anything or done anything. So to me, it appears that the first time he did, hopefully the first time he did it, he got caught, and then that they headed something off of the pass here, but that's the rosiest way to describe
that's
this.
Really putting a positive spin on it. Yeah,
I don't think you want to put a positive spin on it. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, that's possible, but we all don't really believe that. I understand, but that's possible. There is it's not 0% chance that that's what happened. And, you got to let the court system do what it does. But he was originally charged with 5 counts, felony child pornography, 2 counts distribution of child exploitation, 3 counts of possession of pornography or child pornography. Just feels icky to even say these things. And of course, he was suspended and dismissed very quickly by Florida. So charges dropped and won't have to register as a sex offender and gets a little bit of probation. And I don't know if there will be like counseling or what have you involved beyond that. But that is the latest on what was a very surprising and just ugly story from last fall. So Jalen Kitna has charges dropped thanks to a plea deal. Meanwhile, coming up this weekend, normally in these segments, I would like to be able to talk about, hey, we got the NFL game tonight or the All-Star games. And like I said, we're kind of at a dead period right now. But one sport outside of Major League Baseball that doesn't ever stop year-round is the UFC, and should be a good little card coming up this weekend at T-Mobile Arena. UFC 290, Alexander Volkanovski defending his championship against Yair Rodriguez, featherweight title on the line. Volkanovski, have you all watched him? I know that we don't talk nearly as much UFC as we used to, like Conor Mania, Rousey. That was years and years and years ago, and there were some remnants of other fighters along the way that kept it interesting. But I do feel like there's sort of this, there was kind of a drop-off, right? Like I think as far as just mainstream interest, I don't feel like it's there nearly as much. John Jones being in and out with suspensions affected that because he was certainly a big draw. But Volkanovski, if you haven't watched him, is an absolute machine in every way, shape, and form. A pretty fun guy to watch fight and just interesting guy to listen to. And he's a badass. But he will be defending his featherweight championship. He's 25-2 in the headline main event against Yair Rodriguez, 15-3. Brandon Moreno, Alexandre Pantoja will be the semi-main event there, but a full card coming up this weekend from T-Mobile in Las Vegas. Volkanovski Rodriguez, if you want some sports to check out this Saturday night.
Yeah, that sport just needs, it's going to go through, I mean, much like boxing did, and boxing, of course, then ate itself. But, I'm sure boxing had a nice run for a while where the heavyweight champions were always good.
Boxing had a nice run because they had unbelievable champions, and then there were too many championship belts.
But the UFC needs to have, to repeat that, you got to have stars that people are going to remember over and over and over again for a period.
One of those guys.
And then when one leaves,
But there aren't 5, there's a UFC, right?
Yeah.
And then what else?
They've got some smaller ones, but the
they
UFC
are they the elite, dominant, no doubt about it, highest league of what that is?
It's not even it's the NFL.
Well, no, I'm making my point. In boxing, you started having the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, and then, my God, there were 3 or 4 other, we call them alphabet title belts. That's what killed boxing.
Yeah, but the reason that boxing had it going so well was, if the heavyweight guy lost, and the next guy, for the most part, had a nice little run, or they went back and forth against each other for a while. There are people who can use. So a decade ends, guys retire. There's a new decade, new blood rolls along. So
boxing also has guys who won 20 years ago who are fighting every once in a while now. It got to that point because the highest level boxers were just not very good, that they weren't I'm not going to use the word. They weren't that good, and so others, just anyone could win a title.
There's a kind of a through line in boxing that starts with even before Rocky Marciano, but from the 20s straight through to 1994, they had a run, and then it just got too much.
Yeah, I can't even name, unfortunately. Klitschko's? Yeah, Klitschko's had a little bit of a run there but I can't even name that now.
Yeah, I mean, that was well over a decade ago. I mean, it's more Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua and guys like that, and that's just the heavyweights that come to mind in somewhat recent years. But, I mean, boxing died, and yet it's still around, and it's fought every single weekend. But it's not at the tip-top of what it could be, Sport of Kings, because, there's not a Tyson, a Foreman, an Ali, whoever you want to name. And, Tyson Fury's picked up some of that slack. The Klitschko's years and years and years ago. I mean, one of the Klitschko's has been a mayor in Ukraine throughout this entire war. So they've been, gone for a while. But I do think that the UFC is as healthy as it's ever been. everything you guys said is right, but they are the healthiest they've ever been financially. They're owned by Endeavor. They're now partnered up with the WWE and an offshoot of Endeavor. Like, they are as successful as possible as a fighting organization. I just think, going back to my original point, that there's just a lack of crossover stars like a Ronda Rousey, a Conor McGregor, where they had a handful of those people years ago, and now they've got really great fighters like Volkanovski and plenty of others, but it's just it doesn't resonate, I think, as frequently as it seemed to a few years ago, but still it's as wildly successful as it's ever been.
Do they need bad boys too? Like Connor became that. There's the one that had the mohawk that was dominant, eventually got beat. Do they need a little bit more of that, or does it matter?
I mean, that was... Yeah, you're talking about Chuck Liddell. That was a really long time ago. That was when they really were launching into a different kind of stratosphere. He was one of the guys that helped them do that like 20 years ago. But no, I don't. I just think that they hit magic. They hit magic at a time when it was just popular and hit the right audience. And you had, again, a bevy of stars who people were interested by. Yep. They were interested by Ronda Rousey and who's this chick who's badass. And then they were more interested in Amanda Nunes, who was really a badass. And, you know, Conor had his moment, and then that was followed up by Khabib. And Khabib Nurmagomedov is a fantastic all-time great fighter, but you had some of the guys like him or GSP that retired and cut their range short. You had John Jones, who was getting in trouble constantly and cutting his range short. And I just think it was a combination of things, but they're as healthy as ever. That'll be a great fight. Volkanovski's incredible, and so enjoy that, like I said, on Saturday, if you so choose. And final thing here, Home Run Derby participants have been announced. 8 players taking part at the All-Star Game annual festivity, the Home Run Derby at T-Mobile Park in Seattle, coming up on Monday night. They've released, as they do the Home Run Derby bracket, the matchups for the first round of this, and you'll have Luis Robert Jr. versus Adley Rutschman, and it should probably break more of a little bit of a capsule for you here as far as each guy goes. But with Robert, you got him from the White Sox. You've got Rutschman from the Orioles. Now, it's also got a little note here of when the number of home runs they had. But Robert, 25 home runs when he was announced as a participant, to Rutschman, who had 11. So that's one matchup. You've also got Pete Alonso versus Julio Rodriguez. Alonso of the Mets, he had 25 when picked. Rodriguez, of course, sensational young player for the Mariners. He had 13 home runs, so that'll be a matchup. You also got Mookie Betts versus Vladimir Guerrero
Betts
Jr.
is representing the Red Sox, right?
Betts representing the Dodgers. He had 23 homers when the field was set, and Guerrero Jr. Had 13 when the field was set. He, of course, of the Blue Jays. And then in the final matchup, Adolis Garcia of the Texas Rangers. Adolis Garcia. 21 home runs when it was set, and he will be taking on Randy Rosarina of the Tampa Bay Rays, who had 16. So there you go. There is your first-round matchups for the MLB Home Run Derby that will be coming your way next week.
Adolis is a...
I just like saying Adolis. I like that better in my head. That's why I say that.
Good for all of them who are part of that. You just hope that none of them that get into it end up like not being able to get back to who they were, because it's a wear and tear deal, that Home Run Derby.
Yeah. By the way, Mookie Betts this year has played in right field, at second base, and shortstop. Enough games that in fantasy baseball he's eligible at all those positions. And the Red Sox right now don't have a second baseman or a shortstop, and their right fielder is fine. It's Alex Verdugo. That's the guy
why did you bring up the Red Sox, Paul? He's not there anymore.
It's just like, this is the most salt in the wound.
You have to let it go.
It's the most. It's like the Dodgers are picking on me specifically.
It's more of a salt in the wound this year than it was originally,
because they don't have all those things, and now he's doing them all.
He did it all before. If he would have,
but they didn't let him, and it's just. I'm just so mad about it. But no, I think it's going to be good. Yeah.
He's a great player.
Yes.
Can't believe anybody who had Mookie Betts would let him go.
I can't either. For nothing. Paul, for literally nothing.
Craig, thank you. Adolis Garcia has been a phenomenal story, along with a lot of the players of the Rangers. But their lead after losing 3 out of 4 to Houston is down to 2 after losing to Boston, in fact, last night. Thank you, Craig. Elijah Rushing, that 5-star edge rusher, committed to Arizona just now over Oregon, Notre Dame, and Tennessee. He becomes the University of Arizona's highest-ranked football commit ever. This is 365 Sports. Texas Beef House. They have now had a chance for everyone to enjoy incredible food, Wagyu beef, for Memorial Day, for Father's Day, and even 4th of July. And now, whether it's a family reunion or you just want to buy great beef, as some of you have who watch this show, TexasBeefHouse.com gives you that opportunity. Let's just say, let's talk burgers. The Wagyu beef, the burgers, they have burgers, regular Wagyu beef. They have ground beef, too, if you want it. They also have the burgers with cheese and jalapeno and even garlic, if that's what you want. And we usually discuss, when we discuss the Wagyu, you think about the steaks, the fillets, the ribeyes, the New York strip. I had a New York strip the other day, and I cooked it as a steak, but it was so delicious. I had 2 of them. I cut the other one up and made some stir fry. I had fajita meat with it. It was fantastic. Erin Duvall, Samantha Duvall, she handles the marketing. It's a company just outside of Tyler in White House, Texas. Yes, the home of Patrick Mahomes. And they raise the Wagyu beef, the cattle, from the start to finish to the point where they get it to you so you can enjoy what they have. It is fantastic. There are some, I've mentioned Kim, I've mentioned others, I think a couple of other, Barry, I think, that have bought from them. You can do that. It's worth it. It's TexasBeefHouse.com.
Looking for power, performance, adventure, or luxury? We've got it all at Allen Samuels in Waco. Shop the greatest selection of brand new inventory and find the vehicle that's right for you. Get amazing deals during the Make This the Summer sales event on new Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Chrysler sedans, minivans, or a sporty Dodge. At Allen Samuels, we're committed to taking care of our customers, and that means having as much new inventory on hand for you to choose from. Shop AllenSamuelsDCJ.com or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. This 5 o'clock hour take you up until 6. We have Ari Temkin coming up at 5:30. Paul's Top 5 in about 45 to 50 minutes. Joined by Andy Staples of On3.com. And Andy, I thought your announcement of where you're going or now at with On3.com, just like an athlete with the commitment picture, committed, tearing open your jacket, and there's a T-shirt or a shirt with On3. Who came up with that idea? Was that you?
That was me, because when you, in real life, were a 0-star walk-on, you always wanted to get the 5-star treatment. So that's one thing I told him. I was like, listen, if we're going to announce this, let me announce it like everybody else, because we've got a guy who does a lot of the recruiting edits, the commitment edits for the recruits. And so we took some goofy pictures and sent them to him and said, do your worst. And it was tremendous. It was more than I could ever have hoped and dreamed for.
So when is your show going to be on? And I'm sure you're still going to write, which would be a tragedy if you just went all video. We'd lose that. But what's the new show going to kind of circle around? How's it all going to play out?
It'll be very similar to the podcast I did when I was at The Athletic, where we do 5 new shows a week. The difference is now it'll be a more fixed schedule, whereas before we kind of recorded when we recorded, and sometimes we went live and sometimes we didn't. We're going to try to go live as often as possible. So if people like doing that, like interacting with the show, and want to be with us on YouTube, they can. Or if they want to get it in podcast form the next morning, then it'll be there for them. So we're going to record in prime time, 7 p.m. Central most nights, and then we'll be live a lot of nights. And then the next morning, if you want to listen on your commute, it'll be on all the podcast platforms. So it'll all be there for you. Same concepts, hitting all the biggest stories in college football, and just trying to have as much fun as we can, because it is the most fun sport in the world.
It is the most fun sport in the world, Andy. You're absolutely right about that. It's about to get even more intriguing in some ways with just all the stuff that's on the horizon, from realignment to expanded playoff and all of that. It's a very interesting time in the media industry. But how do you feel about the way college football and the media and the support and the fandom has kind of adapted, and is also, I don't know, it feels like there's a little bit of growth ongoing as the sport starts to, blossom a bit?
Well, I mean, it's the second most popular sport in America right now behind the NFL, so it's doing all right. And it's funny because all the muckety-mucks in charge said if NIL ever came to be, or this ever came to be, that it would be the death knell of the sport. No, it's actually growing, and people seem to like it. And if you look at what they're paying to televise it now, the numbers are monstrous. So it's just getting bigger, and I think people. Yeah, it's interesting. The NIL stuff, I don't think anybody cares unless there's a big story about it where, I did a story on this guy that Florida had signed, and there was a contract for $13.8 million where there wasn't actually any financial backing behind it. Like that was a big deal. Or if somebody has a really funny commercial, like when the dude named Coldis Crawford, who was playing for Nebraska, did an HVAC commercial. So that's all that people care about with that. More than anything else, they just want their games. And I kind of think the pandemic made us not take it for granted anymore. Like, oh, this could be taken away from us. There could be times when this doesn't exist. So let's enjoy this. Let's watch it. Let's go to games. Let's have fun with it. And I really think people have embraced it. I think people are excited about the 12-team playoff. You get your usual stick in the muds who don't want anything to change. They want it to be like it was when they were in 8th grade. But I think everybody else is looking at it like, hey, my team might actually have a chance. My team might actually be able to compete for the national title instead of just these same 3-4 teams.
In fact, with that being said, with the 12 teams, there will be more of the higher the hierarchy of college football. But what does the playoff do? Does it help the blue bloods more, or does it help the ones who perhaps otherwise would be left at home?
I think the way they structured it helps everybody a little more. And so you guys obviously follow Baylor very closely, and I'm very interested to see what the Big 12 looks like in this new iteration, because we start in 2024 with the 12-team playoff. Oklahoma and Texas are gone from the Big 12. The 4 schools that are coming in this year will be there, so they'll be at 12 unless Brett Yormark gets 2 more, which I know that's always a possibility. But you think about it, even without Texas or Oklahoma, if you look at the numbers since the playoffs started, that version of the Big 12 should be able to get 2 teams in most years. And I don't know in a different format if Baylor, K-State, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, schools like that would feel like they had that decent a shot at it. Like the 14 playoff, Baylor and TCU were close in 2014, but it hasn't felt that close for them. They'd be in a lot of those years. When they won the Big 12 a couple of years ago, they'd be in the playoff. And I think that changes your view of the whole season. It changes your excitement level before the season, and it changes how engaged and interested you are during the season.
Yeah, Andy, I think it's probably the best idea they've ever had to not make college football the survivor pool where when you lose, unless you're a certain handful of teams, once you lose one game, you're out. And so that was the other thing I never understood the argument against of like, well, if my team lost on October 10th, then I can forget about January 3rd altogether. It just didn't seem like it made sense.
Yeah, it didn't. It never made sense to me either. And the only argument people could give for why they wanted it to be that way was, well, I want to see the best team. Okay, well, you don't know if you got the best team because for the longest time is it the undefeated team? Like, I remember 2012. Notre Dame gets destroyed by Alabama in the national title game. Georgia was way better than Notre Dame that year. Like, Georgia barely lost Alabama in the SEC title game. They would have killed Notre Dame. Texas A&M actually beat that Alabama team. They would have killed Notre Dame. So did that game determine who the best team was? No. I think you're actually going to have more games between the best teams now that determine the best team at the end. Now, is it still going to be one of that small group? Yeah, probably, because that's the only team, the kind of team that can get through that meat grinder. But I do wonder, with more teams kind of in the mix, do a few recruits who would have gone to Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, that group, do they get sheared off? Is it one or two decide to go, oh, you know what, Penn State makes the playoff a lot, so I'm going to go there. Wisconsin makes the playoff a lot, so maybe I'm going to go there. Because the more that happens, the closer everybody gets together. I think that's probably what needs to happen to get a larger pool of people who can actually win the national title.
Hey, Arizona just landed a 5-star in like the last half hour.
I know. Hey, Jed Fish and I were students at the University of Florida at the same time. He was not on the football team. Now, he volunteered to work with the football team later and learned a lot from Coach Spurrier. But he has done a phenomenal job at Arizona. Like, I don't think people even understand. That roster was in bad shape when they fired Kevin Sumlin. And Jed Fish has come in and really changed things. So this will be, if this guy sticks, he'll be the highest rated recruit they ever had. And last year they set the previous record with a wide receiver. So, I mean, it's rolling there. So it's one of those things that's funny because people look at teams that have not played very well of late, and it feels like you'll never get back. But like Arizona's coming back. You look at what Lance Leipold's done at Kansas. You can come back from the abyss. This is a lot of work.
I'm glad you brought up it's a perfect transition into the Big 12, Andy. I know that one of the videos you posted, after your announcement was talking about the newcomers and BYU and how they'll fit in and all of that. What are your thoughts on this crazy one-time only 14-team, 4 teams in, 2 teams out Big 12 that's coming up this season? It seems like there's, a lot of buzz for various reasons, but where is it on your interest scale in 2023? Very
interesting because poor Texas. Nobody's going to feel sorry for Texas and Oklahoma, but everybody's going to be taking their shots at them. It's going to be wild, and it's really they're going to be the target on the back teams, and they usually are. But I think it's fun that everybody is going to get a crack at one, or all the newcomers will get a crack at one of them in their home stadium this year. Like Cincinnati gets Oklahoma for the Big 12 opener, and then Texas has to go to Houston, which I just love because I talked to some of the Houston people about it after the schedule came out, and they're like, yeah, before they would have made us move this game to NRG and it would have been 75% Texas fans. Now it's going to be all Houston fans.
Andy, you mentioned Coach Spurrier a second ago, and you were very close to that program then when he was there. I did a top 5 list last week about coaches who would the old school coaches who would kill it in this era. And I think Steve Spurrier, as maybe one of the original CEO coaches, would do very well right now. A young Steve Spurrier.
He wasn't a CEO. Steve Spurrier was the quarterback coach, the receivers coach, the play caller, but he could only because he has this savant level ability to see things from the sideline that most people can't see from the press box. But it would have been interesting to see him in this era of NIL because he's always been, well, let's pay the players. So he was always for that. And I think it would have helped him because he didn't like a lot of the recruiting stuff. He thought some of the recruiting stuff was kind of icky. I think he wouldn't have to, because he wouldn't do the car salesman thing. He wouldn't do you're the most important player ever recruited, and I'm guaranteeing you a starting job. He would never do that. He's like, well, you can come play Florida. We'll find somebody who'll beat you. And that doesn't work on every 5-star. So I think he would have liked this era better where the kid's like, okay, cool, you got a good offense. Can I get a good NIL deal? Okay, I'm good.
We mentioned, or Paul did, and it was no clue that there's no brainer that Barry Switzer was already in his own NIL era, wasn't he?
Well, listen, I grew up in SEC country. The NIL era has been going on by a different name for 100 years. So, but the thing is, Barry Switzer also outsmarted a lot of people. The thing is, take the Southwest Conference and pre-integration in the Southwest Conference, Barry Switzer just killed it in the state of Texas and forced them to move a little faster than they would have. And but it's interesting. There are a lot of coaches that I can think of from the 70s and 80s who would have probably enjoyed this era a little bit more.
Andy, the combination of what you do if you need to report and or investigate and or give an opinion or have a sharp edge, combined with your sense of humor, has that who you've been all of your life?
Oh, yeah. This is what I like to do. Now, when I got into the business, I worked for newspapers, so it was a very, kind of set role. Like when I was the beat writer, you don't give your opinions. You just report the news, and there were columnists who give their opinions. But the internet changed everything and made it where you got to be able to report, find news. You got to be able to give opinions. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to do because you got to go back and talk to people after you've given an opinion sometimes. And sometimes there's an opinion they don't like. But I feel like if you treat everyone fairly and, if I give an opinion, I'm not doing it just to make you click on it. Now, I may have some strong opinions. Like I was on one of our podcasts today, and I was pushing back against J.D. Piquel, who's one of our other hosts, because he had said, it's not a failure if Texas doesn't win the Big 12 this year. And I said, no, it absolutely is a failure if they don't win the Big 12. When are they going to come into a season from this point forward where they're going to be favored in 11 of the 12 regular season games? That's not going to happen again. So, yes, they do need to do that. And it's a strong opinion, but it's a legitimate one. Texas is loaded this year. This is as talented a team as they've had probably since when Matt Brown really had it rolling. And they need to be able to win. So that means they need to be able to beat Kansas State. They need to be able to beat TCU. They need to be able to beat Baylor. And in the past years, those have been games they've struggled with.
Then I have, if you don't mind, one follow-up, and I know the dog wants to go out, I think, here pretty soon. Will schools like Texas or Oklahoma, and again, Texas has struggled really on and off. There have been some better years than others, but the last 10 or 12 years, Oklahoma had their first in a long time. Are schools like that are used, especially Oklahoma, used to running the table, maybe not as recently, are they ready to understand that 8-4, 9-3 might be the norm rather than the 11-1 and 12-0?
I don't know if they're ready for that quite yet. I think they're working their way there. Texas probably should understand that because they've had a lot of it. But Oklahoma is a little different story. And that's why when people say, well, Oklahoma is in for a rude awakening in the SEC, I'm not so sure they are. Because other than Ohio State, Oklahoma has been the most consistent winner in the history of college football. I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt to figure that out when they get to the SEC. When they say, okay, here's how the rosters are constructed. Here's how everybody spends their resources. Let's just do that. And I'm actually more confident in that I don't know necessarily Brent Venables is the right guy. He's going to have to prove that with the way he coaches on the field. I actually trust Brent Venables more than I would trust Lincoln Riley to bring them the kind of roster they need to survive in the SEC. But I trust Lincoln Riley coaching on the field more than I trust Brent Venables right now. So he needs to prove that he can do that. But as far as the administration at Oklahoma, I think they're going to figure it out because historically they've always figured it out. Texas is a little more of a question mark. Texas is a lot more like Florida, like USC, where they've had these big ups, where they had when they hit the right coach, they really get going. But when they don't have the right coach, it's a struggle.
Thank you, Andy. Congratulations on your opportunity with On3.com. Good luck with the podcast and all the other things you do. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Andy Staples, On3.com, was with theathletic.com when it first launched. And, of course, there's a lot of movement. We think about movement when it comes to the transfer portal and whatever else. There's the same thing when it comes to media outlets. Some bad news because of the layoffs, not just ESPN, and also some good news because there's other places for you to land and start and continue what you do as a career.
Yeah, and I don't know that I phrased my original question the right way. Like, yeah, college football is the second most popular sport, but would you know that by the coverage up until recently? Would you even know that in some ways on the coverage still?
No.
If you just watch TV all day, how much college football do you see covered?
No.
Basically none. So that's where I was coming from. Is you have a brand like On3. You know, before that it was 247. Before that it was Rivals. Scout was in there for a little while, and they got gobbled up. And you know, it'll be another thing I'm sure in like 5 to 10 years. It'll be huthut.com or something. You know, but. You know, that's obviously grown into something that
I'm going to register that domain name right now.
Yeah, right. But that, you know, now he's a part of it. I think the YouTube thing, I don't brag on myself or really us at all. It's just not my personality. But I do think that we at least played a part in this growing ecosystem of college football specifically on YouTube. I don't think there's any doubt about that, among others. And I just think with the playoff and the big realignment moves and the bigger games that you're going to get as a result of that, and then just the need and desire to survive and thrive by others who aren't dealing with the biggest pots of money all the time. You know, they've all adapted over the years. Like TCU is one of the most adaptable programs in the entire country for the journey that they've been on, right? To get to where they were. I mean, that you talk about a program who's been through it. You know, there's going to be a lot of programs like that still have this hunger burning and want to go shake up the status quo. And I just think it's a really interesting time. NIL thrown in there. Overall, it's a great time to be a college football fan, even if there are a lot of question marks. And I feel like there is sort of a growing, at least coverage of it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And it hasn't switched over to, you know, anything outside of your usually scheduled block of college football TV show on ESPN or whatever. But hopefully we are getting to a point where it becomes a more regular topic of conversation.
Here's one of the things that my brother called me. Here's one of the things that when you look at coverage nationally, you have the NFL, every show, every day, there's going to be some mention, and all they have to do is throw up a star, a Cowboys logo, or something.
Joe Burrow.
The NBA,
Pat Mahomes.
no matter where they rank among what's important, the NBA kind of has that.
Yeah.
You know? You could always just bring up LeBron or Kyrie Irving or whatever. And college football is huge, but it is still kind of contained. Now, the realignment talk has allowed that to become, or even transfer portal, NIL, become much more of a 12-month-a-year rotation of news. But you're right, you're not going to see too many talk shows or whoever shows on the national level that are going in replacing an NFL segment that could be about Russell Wilson compared to what's happening with the SEC.
I get some of that too because, hey, like why do they talk about the Cowboys all the time? Because they're winning? No, because they're just super popular. Why do they talk about the Lakers all the time? They move the needle. So, hey, when you're talking about the Big 12, that doesn't necessarily move the needle. If you're talking about Vanderbilt, that doesn't necessarily move the needle. But talking about Bama, talking about Texas, talking about those teams move the needle. So I can see where it's so, or has been so regionalized, or there's just so many teams that are like specific interests that you're not going to go on SportsCenter and waste 20 minutes talking about teams who have like 50,000 seat stadiums. And so that's understandable, but I'm glad, point being, that there's pockets that we've helped fill in and others have helped fill in to cover all those bases and to give, some extra coverage to what has already been out there.
Yeah, and I do think, though, and I mentioned this, Craig, last week when you and I were talking about the layoffs, that the proliferation of shows like us is hurt. Like, not the big thing that's hurt ESPN, but it does hurt ESPN in the fact that, there are viewers that are not glued into their network like they used to be because they have a million other options. So YouTube certainly has hurt the big sports channels for sure, because it's hurt everybody, because you can't just lock into one thing and you can watch things for a minute that you specifically want to see. So I remember when I was a kid and the scoreboard moved so slow on ESPN. And so if you want to see, I remember one time my dad and I sitting in a hotel bar waiting for A&M score to pop up for 25 minutes.
Yep, I did too. Yep.
You would just sit there and wait. Like, what was the score? It was not on TV. They're playing SMU. It wasn't on TV. We sat there for 25 minutes. Finally popped up, and it was just like A&M 17, SMU 9. That's it. And so that's all you had.
And if you missed it, you missed it.
You missed it. Yeah. We had to wait another 25 minutes.
Remember before you were born, there was the thing called the ticker.
Yeah.
The AP wire.
But now, not only could I look at that same A&M SMU game, I could put A&M versus SMU, and there's 100 things by the time the game's over of highlights and all this.
Scores, stats.
And I don't have to sit through any of the other stuff that I don't care about. So that's also part of what's going on is there's now you can specifically look for what you're looking for, and you don't have to sit through anything that you don't care about.
All right. Thank you to Andy Staples. Good luck to him and what he does moving forward. When we come back, we're going to hear from Ari Temkin. He is co-host of the Big 12 Radio Network. It's 525. The Big 12 media standings, the poll came out earlier. We started the show with that. We've had basically every guest we've discussed it, and this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Right now, here are some of the specials. You can go to marcos.com, but I can tell them to you as well. The Magnifico lineup, pepperoni Magnifico, or the sausage Magnifico, or the combination of the ultimate Magnifico of sausage and pepperoni. $9.99. That's where it starts at, based on what kind of crust or what size you want. Unlimited, medium one topping pizza, starting at just $6.99. There are different codes online for which one you want. Boneless wings, savory sauces, or if you want them dry. And I'm not one when I have my wings, and sometimes I'll dip into where it might have some sort of sauce on it, but I'd rather not because I wear contacts. So anything with wings and sauce on it is usually not a very good match. And when I cook, I usually use those like cooking gloves to make sure that I don't accidentally put something to pull out or put in a contact. But I like the dry wings. I really do, and they have those available for you too. Bob Mock has been in the pizza business for 20 plus years, has 5 locations of Marco's right now in Waco, including Hewitt, Woodway, Robinson, China Spring, and Belmead. He understands the business. He's been there as a driver. He's been there running the inside shop, making pizzas, and also as a general manager, and now owns 5 locations in Waco. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
one size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one size fits all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs, even offering financing if that's needed. Everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
365 Sports, and if you look at the set, go ahead, Garrett, open up the wide shot. I'm by myself all of a sudden. It's the way it is. Oh, hi, Paul. Nice to have you back.
Do you think every time I walk off the set, I'm just going to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks now?
Or you're going to, the 31 days in Hawaii. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak. This is 365 Sports. Ari Temkin, he's a co-host, a part of the Big 12 Radio Network, and does a lot more than that. He is a rock star, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Whoever has ever introduced you better than that?
Nobody, Smokey. You're the best, buddy, and I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate the great work that you guys do at Sikkim 365. You guys are incredible. I love it.
Well, we appreciate you, too. We'll look forward. You're going to be in Arlington, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I wouldn't miss it in the world. I live in Dallas. Of course, I better be there.
Well, if you're not, we're going to call somebody and look for you. Now, the poll came out today. I released the one I did last week, which is almost very close to identical. Your thoughts, Texas at 1, defending champion K-State is what? 3, and what are your thoughts about the poll that came out today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should have expected that my poll would be somewhat controversial. If you're wondering who the one next to Oklahoma State's name was for the Big 12 championship, you're talking to the idiot that did that. Look, I mean, I don't know how anybody could have watched this league the last couple of years and then figured that, like, oh, the favorite will win the league again, especially when you consider that the favorites, or the teams that have the most talent, quote unquote, have major question marks at the coaching position. I mean, we're to believe here that Steve Sarkisian is going to have a team that's going to win more than 9 games for the first time ever as a coach. He's won 9 games once, and that was with a bowl win in there. So suddenly this is a team and a coach that's going to get a team to 9-10 wins when he's never done it in 9 years of coaching. Brent Venables is going to year 2, which obviously is the same year that Dave Aranda won a Big 12 championship, but there's major question marks there, and how big of a jump can their defense take, in one whole off season. I mean, I certainly understand the noise surrounding Kansas State. I mean, I'm a big believer in Will Howard and what he did at the end of the year last year, and K-State, what they bring back. But, as we saw a couple of years ago, Baylor came out of nowhere to win the Big 12. Last year, both TCU and K-State came out of nowhere to win the Big 12 and then get to a college football playoff national championship. So, I don't know how anybody could, like, they're really, to me, there's like 5 teams you could say they're not going to win the Big 12 this year. Everybody else, you make a pretty good case for anybody else to win this conference. It's that wide open. It's a league of parity. And so in a year where we don't really know who the best team is, I went with the best coach, the most consistent coach. I'm betting on Mike Gundy, and I'm certainly betting on the come for some of these players at Oklahoma State. That's the reason I picked Oklahoma State to win the Big 12, despite the lack of success they've had against OU, number one, and number two, the lack of success they had winning the Big 12.
Well, I mean, it's just, I think part of the thing that most people would look at is it was just such a firestorm of weird and bad things that happened to Mike Gundy last year with the injuries, and then Spencer Sanders transfers, and Mason Cobb, and, a lot of other guys left as well, moved around the entire country. But Mike Gundy didn't seem to mind any of that, Ari, going into this year. So while I would not have voted them number one, it's not like a crazy conspiracy theory to say that they could do it.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a league of parity, right? I mean, if you pick Mississippi State to win the SEC, people are going to look at you sideways because of how good and consistent Georgia and Alabama have been at the top of that conference. That's just not been the case here in the Big 12, and there's no indication that this is going to stop being a league of parity. That's what I just keep going back to is how did 41 media members decide that Texas was going to win this conference when, that's basically 2/3 of all voters that voted on this, when, again, Steve Sarkisian has never won more than 8 games in regular season, and there's just been a lot of disappointment surrounding Texas. Now, none of that has any bearing on this year. I understand that, but I just find it hard to believe that a league that has been this hard to predict the last couple of years will suddenly go chalk, when, to me, Texas is not a team worthy of being chalk this season. As for Oklahoma State, look, I mean, Alan Bowman has put up some big-time numbers when he's been healthy in the Big 12, so he's returning to a conference where he's put up big-time numbers. I think he has learned from 2 years under Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, and I think he's got a better experience through that. I think, if he stays healthy, it's a big if, but it's like that for everybody. That's where I like their upside. I love Brennan Presley, so you've got a legitimate you've got a legitimate number one wideout. And I like Ollie Gordon in terms of the running game. You mentioned Mason Cobb is gone. Colin Oliver is still there. And then Kendall Daniels, who was one of the top safeties in college football last year, now moves in to be kind of a rover for them, which I love. I think that's the perfect position for him. So I just see a ton of upside for a team in a league that, again, multiple years in a row now, we've just seen, we have to expect the unexpected. I guess I was surprised that there are more teams represented with numbers that were being picked at the top of the conference. I think a lot of people look at the talent of Texas. And look, I buy it too in terms of their talent, but you can literally make a case to me for every team in the Big 12, with the exception of the 4 newcomers in West Virginia to win the conference this year.
Ari, you know a thing or two about the Kansas Jayhawks, and Lance Leipold, obviously really great year last year. The what if of, if Jalen Daniels doesn't get hurt, where do they end up when all is said and done? But he's back. Others are back as well, and there seems to be a positive feeling, but, you got to go out there and actually do it. Where are you on the scale of Kansas repeating or even, going past what they did last year, or do you think there's a little bit of a fallback in store?
I love that hat, Craig. That's an awesome looking hat too, by the way.
Thank you, brother.
So I mean, as some of you may know, I'm a KU grad, and so last year was incredible. I had a decent amount of money on the over at 2.5 last year for KU, and had that in 4 weeks. This was a program, guys, that had really been performing at an FCS level for a decade in the Power 5. I mean, they were not even winning games against FCS opponents at the beginning of the year. That's how bad they had been. the fact that they got back to a bowl game, the fact that they played one of the best and most entertaining bowl games in the entire bowl season, the Liberty Bowl last year against Arkansas. Again, they lost. They were down by more than 2 touchdowns with about 3 minutes to go. It's incredible. I mean, it's nothing short of a miracle. And then when you consider that, oh, by the way, they've got the preseason offensive player of the year and 4 players that have made the Big 12 all-conference team, and then another glaring omission, and Kenny Logan, a guy that was an all-conference performer last year. My big thing on KU is their defense. I think they got through last year with a little bit of bells and whistles in terms of quick rotations. Teams caught up with them. They were playing at a faster pace, and so they weren't able to substitute as much. Therefore, they weren't as fresh, and they were eaten alive. They've lost some of the best players from that defense from last year. Now, Kobe Bryant and Kenny Logan are 2 guys that are really good performers at the back end of their defense. But that's where I struggle is how could a defense that lost a couple of guys in the NFL improve when they were so bad last year? Now, the offense is as good as there is in the conference. They basically returned the entire offensive line, including, all Big 12 first-team interior offensive lineman and Mike Nowitzki, who came over with Leipold from Buffalo, and Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal, at running back. So, I mean, the ingredients are there for this team to be really, really good, but I think the downside for them is their defense. Now, it could be better, but could is the operative word. We're not sure, and especially based on some of the personnel they've lost to the NFL last year, I'm not certain that's going to be better, and that's where I struggle with them. But look, this was a team that wasn't even competing at a Big 12 level. So for me, I was at the point as a KU alum and fan, like I just want to turn my TV on Saturdays and watch them compete for 4 quarters. Well, they obviously did that last year.
All right, what team is the hardest for you to get a read on?
Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I love Dave Aranda. So I start there, and it's like, okay, in 3 years, it's been very up and down. He's unlike any other coach I've ever been around in all of sports, in terms of his introspection, his willingness, to be introspective, his willingness to, take a hard look at things and overcome issues. They've had obviously a lot of changeover in terms of their staff in just a few short years. Last year, and I'll remind people of this after picking Oklahoma State and Alan Bowman to be my offensive player of the year this year. Last year I picked Baylor to win the Big 12 and Blake Shapen to be the offensive player of the year. So you could take me for the kiss of death and know that Oklahoma State's probably in the same boat this year. But look, I still believe in Blake Shapen. We saw him play at a high level at times. I think, and I'm sure you guys share the sentiment, that like what was around Blake Shapen probably wasn't helping him. And, so I think with Richard Reese and what he was able to do last year, and then Shapen, and then hopefully some semblance of playmakers on the outside, I certainly could see Baylor as being a team competing towards the top of the conference. But I can also see you lose Ika, how good the defense going to be. You now have a new defensive coordinator that's coming in. How much will this be Aranda's defense? So Baylor's got to be the toughest team for me. I could see them winning the Big 12. I mean, I really don't think that's too big of a stretch, and I could see them, finishing in the bottom half of the Big 12 too.
I made this comment last week before we released my poll that I stared at it. It was the blank poll that Joni Lehman sends to us. I stared at it, Ari, for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and it was almost like I was afraid to touch it, like it was a copperhead. And then finally, I just dove into it. I was like, this is not – I'm not going to get I may get ridiculed, but to me it's an impossible task. But in the end, it was kind of fun. But I agree. In Baylor, I have them at 6. I thought about maybe 7 or 8. I even thought maybe, how about 5? But how many times have you asked Dave Aranda a question, and I don't know how often, I don't know the interview process, but I know you guys get a lot. How many times have you asked him a question, he's answered it with some philosophy or whatever, and you may have forgotten the question?
Every time? Well, every time you ask a question and then you pay attention, you're like, wow, that's amazing. And then he keeps going and you're like, that's amazing. And then you're like, what's he talking about?
Absolutely, man. You're right.
And then he comes back home and then you're like, oh, that's amazing. I love this guy.
Yeah.
But he's so personable. I mean, obviously the answers and the philosophy are one thing. He's so personable. I think he's somebody that practices very much what he preaches. And the introspection, guys, I think it's something that's just masculine. It's just like built and ingrained in us as humans and men. So like, we don't want to be reflective of past failures. We don't want to be reflective, period. Just constantly move forward. And that's such a dynamic of the psychology involved in football coaching. like, nope, we're just looking forward. We're not worried about what happened. We're looking forward. I think it's the coaches that understand when to be introspective and how to be introspective. They're the best coaches in sports, and I think Aranda does that better than anybody.
Amongst the 4 new fan bases, who have you guys seen maybe the most interesting or, I guess, most abundant reactions from as far as their excitement level and, now starting to follow the Big 12 on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, you've got 4 new fan bases that are ecstatic to be in the Big 12. You've got 4 programs that are ecstatic to be in the Big 12. They've all put significant investments behind what they're doing. I mean, we talked with the athletic director at the University of Houston, and it's like, man, they made a lot of these investments here without having any idea of if they would get into the conference, right? Like they hired Dana Holgerson, a sitting Power 5 head coach. They've invested a ton of money into their facilities. They did all that blindly without ever knowing that it would actually lead them into a conference invite. And if Texas and OU don't leave, who knows if it ever comes to fruition? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have programs that bet on themselves. I mean, UCF is one of the greatest stories ever. I mean, when you think back about like the Jim Leavitt South Florida teams that were really good, and if you were to say like, oh, in 20 years, the big UCF's going to be in the Big 12 and USF is still going to be in the group of 5, you're like, what? How could that possibly be? USF was the first, of those programs to really come into the national landscape. And UCF, I think they saw what happened with USF and have taken it to the next level. And, for a program that started in the late 60s as a Division III program to now be sitting here with a seat at a Power 5 with a proven Power 5 head coach, Gus Malzahn. I mean, that's incredible. It's an incredible story. And, I mean, there's such an outlier. I just being a dumb Texan, I guess, and not really thinking about geography, you're like, oh, yeah, now West Virginia's got Cincinnati and UCF in the conference. That's close geographically. And then when you do the mileage, it's 2 miles closer to Lawrence, Kansas than from Morgantown, West Virginia than it is to Orlando, Florida from Morgantown.
All right, I on UCF, I think you can't underestimate. You mentioned that run that USF had, the amount of spite those schools have for one another, and that UCF, kind of like Larry David and Curb, like built a spite store and it worked so well.
And you know that, Paul, obviously, with your history in that state. No, and I know people at USF that, I mean, they look at UCF getting into the Big 12 as an affront on decisions that they made in that period of time that led them astray. And it's about investment. I mean, look, I mean, I get it. If you're USF, what kind of investments are you making into your football facilities and whatnot without having any assurances that money is coming back? I mean, these are high-stakes gambles. And for UCF, it clearly paid off with the investments they've made. And for USF, it's a great story. And maybe they were first to market and were first to become kind of one of those second-tier programs in the state of Florida to have a national name for themselves. But it was USCF that put their money where their mouth is, and that's why they're in the Big 12 right now.
Ari, it's always great to be on with you guys, and we'll see you, Dave, you, and others next week in Arlington. Can't wait to see you, and thanks for your time. And by the way, I'm working on maybe getting one of these 365 sports caps for you to have whenever you want to wear it.
Awesome. Yes.
All right.
My way, and I'll pimp it whenever. That's awesome. That's a great hat, and you guys are doing fantastic work at 365. We're so happy to be partnered with you guys, to have you guys on to talk about your insights within the Big 12 and Baylor, and can't wait to catch up with you guys at Big 12 Media Days next week.
Look forward to it. Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio Network, Sirius and XM, and does a lot. I mean, Cowboys and other shows, and does a great job with it. We appreciate his time. When we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5. Dunn's Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center, just off Richland Drive, and also Valley Mills in Waco. Last week, I went by there, and Ashley was there, Cheyenne was there. Carol wasn't there, but sometimes it's 1 or 2 or 3 of them. And it was kind of like she said, hey, by the way, don't forget to promote the CBD products, because I was going to promote for Father's Day, and of course we did, or any day, even 4th of July, if you want to get cigars. They have a 48-foot walk-in humidor. But I told Paul, because I was off on Friday, I told him, I said, hey, don't forget, Ashley reminded me, the CBD products, we think about maybe ourselves. I take Vitadreams. It's a CBD, and I've kind of gotten an idea of what I need to take it, about when I need to take it based on when I'm ready to go to bed. And it does kind of just calm you down a little bit and help you save, even if it's 15 minutes or an hour of tossing and turning. I have been up at times at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm like, man, I feel like I've slept so well, where before I tossed and turned, constantly up and down. It's really helped me when it comes to my sleep habits. But she brought up, because of 4th of July, and I know it's gone, but CBD products for dogs who get like whacked out because of fireworks. Talked to Paul about it with Woodrow. It's not a bad idea. Perhaps for anything else when they maybe need to be calm a little bit more than they are around people. It's Don Chimodor and Coffee Beans, Ashley, Cheyenne, and Carol in the Townwest Shopping Center off Richland Drive in Valley Mills in Waco.
The future's bright. The time is now. College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Aaron, it's premium grade East Texas beef, and you're located just outside of Tyler. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, the kind of beef that people want. And then also your label is what catches people's attention as well.
Yes, we have a all-natural, pasture-raised Wagyu beef. It's a USDA label. That means our cattle never spend any time in the feed yard. They go straight from the pasture to the day of harvest, and we oversee the whole process from the beginning of the genetic choices when we make these matings to the time the calves are born, to the feed choices, all the way through when the animals are harvested. So we oversee the whole thing as a family, and we just believe, life's too short to eat average beef. So we offer people a chance to step up their game and try Wagyu beef at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
It's
time for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 last chance QBs. These are guys who have made their way to the transfer portal. Some 3 times, one 4 times, one 2 times, but that are on the spot where it has to work out for them because either their eligibility is up or even if they had another year after this one, if this year doesn't work out, then they're probably going to be a backup.
Can they walk and chew gum?
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Number 5, JT Daniels, who's at Rice now, and this would be his 4th school after USC, Georgia, West Virginia. And good for him that he's going to get the kind of academic, push at Rice that's there. But he's been trying to make it work a lot of places and just has never kind of broken through that ceiling and it had become, unfortunately for him, what they call in the pros kind of just a guy. And I hope it works out for Rice and that they make a bowl game with JT Daniels. But this is one of those things, and the new transfer rules might be pointed directly at him because he's been to 4 schools in 5 or 6 years now, and it just never worked out for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been all over the place. As you mentioned, Southern Cal, Rice, stops with Georgia and West Virginia in between. I mean, he's been in the SEC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, and what is Rice in CUSA, I think. I haven't checked in a while.
You know what? If I had to take a quiz on where everybody is now with the new additions elsewhere, I would absolutely struggle with it.
Like, are they in the American soon? Like, because now, everybody's onloading, offloading. Remember, I really, just off the top of my head, don't recall exactly where they are at the moment. But, yeah, I mean, he's been in 3 of the Power 5s. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. So, yeah, at some point, time runs out, and like you said, Paul, he'll get a great education at Rice. Hopefully his schoolwork up to this point. I mean, to get in, he had to have at least been doing his schoolwork. But, great academic opportunity. And, it's like you said, it's your last chance. So we'll see what he does with it. But they were borderline a bowl team last year, and they've made some changes. And, I'm sure they're looking around, too. As an academic institution, maybe they're not that bothered by it. When they're looking around and they're seeing, like, Tulane and schools like that getting mentioned for Pac-12 membership, and Houston's joining the Big 12. And not that Rice has really ever been a power of any sort, but,
many years ago,
their focus is academics.
Many,
and so that's understandable. But had athletics been a little bit, more consistent or successful on the way, like, could their story have been a little bit different? I don't know.
Wait a minute. Are both of those JT Daniels?
Well, one of them I think is the mirror image.
Because the one on the left looks like a quarterback. The one on the right looks like it could be
a deep snapper.
It's mirror image.
Like just like waiting.
A tight end.
Yeah.
Well, that's him. It's just a flipped image. Yeah.
Number 4, Emory Jones at Cincinnati. I'm very curious to see if Scott Satterfield finds what Florida and Arizona State both couldn't find in Emory Jones. Now, a lot of the knocks on Arizona State was they did not use his athleticism very well. Of course, they didn't do anything very well the last couple of years, but I'm curious to see what happens here with Emory Jones, and obviously he's out of eligibility, but didn't work out at Florida, didn't work out at Arizona State, and then Cincinnati was in a situation where they just wanted a walk and chew gum guy, which is what Emory Jones has been so far in his career and just hasn't broken through. This is the reason I have Cincinnati at the bottom of the league. I just think that we've seen what Emory Jones is. It's not like this guy's a sophomore that hasn't broken through yet. He's been now at 3 places, but this is, last stop for him as well.
Was he the one you compared to Vince Young?
No. Anthony Richardson was the one.
Okay,
the one that's
the NFL.
The one that sent him off to Arizona State was.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Because he had those. Look, if you watch Anthony Richardson, he had those moments at Florida where you're like, oh, I haven't seen anybody do that since Vince Young, and then, he had moments where he just didn't look like he was there at all. So, but no, Emory Jones just was, and he was a walking pick 6 at Florida for sure. I mean, that's why he lost his job. So we'll see if that changes in the Big 12.
He's a player with a skill set that's obviously been desirable to multiple teams at this point. I don't think that Scott Satterfield's a complete moron when it comes to picking quarterbacks, but I don't know how many other options that he had. It would have been interesting to see like how they eventually landed on Emory Jones, but Ben Bryant decides to leave, like that kind of threw them for a loop. So they did what they could, and he's going to be the guy. And I think that really their season will probably depend greatly on whatever he ends up doing, because I don't know if they're so strong in another. It's a weird year for Cincinnati, just with losing Fickle and. I just don't know what to expect. It's not even so much joining the Big 12. It's just in general, they have a lot of questions. They put a lot of guys in the pros over the last 2 years. I mean, Luca had turned that into a factory, and, Sauce Gardner amongst others. Mm-hmm. Very interesting time for them, at a pivotal time for them. And, if it goes as it has gone with Emory Jones, then they're probably not going to win a ton of games, but maybe he can help stem the tide, or maybe he can surprise, and provide some stability there.
Yep. Number 3. Keaton Slovis at BYU. This is one I think that there's a maybe bit of a higher ceiling for, just because I trust what Kalani Sitake is going to do on offense there. But, again, there's a lot going on. This is his third stop, USC, Pitt, and now BYU. USC seems to have a lot of these. But they, this is they're hoping it works out. And BYU, who usually has, at their best times, has a nice, row of quarterbacks where one guy leaves and the other guy steps in. And now you lose Jaron Hall off to the NFL, and you kind of find yourself in a spot where it's go get a transfer or put it up to a guy who is almost no experience at all. So this, I believe, was the better of the options, but even still hasn't worked out at 2 spots for Slovis.
Yeah, he just hasn't been very good. As far as like when we last saw him at Pitt last year, fine to bad. Honestly, at USC, it was very up and down. He throws a lot of picks, and typically the last couple of times we've seen him, those have been almost exactly as the same number of touchdowns he's throwing, which is never a good thing to be kind of 50-50-ish like that.
Strikeouts to walks. You never want the walks to be even.
And that's not how his career started off. He started off with a bang, which is why I think we're still talking about him all these years later, was the way that it popped off at USC back in 2019. But, yeah, I mean, he's going to have to get better protecting the football and just get better in general. Not a bad option to pivot to when you lose a guy like Jaron Hall, as you mentioned. But, yeah, certainly enough questions to not feel like, all right, boom, they're not going to miss a beat. They're just going to move on along. And that's not even taking into account some of the talent they lost around Jaron Hall, like a Puka Nacua, for example, even if they did have to play without him quite a bit. But, yeah, I mean, he's got a great opportunity to make a big splash in their first year, but I don't know, a little bit of too much unknown about him at the moment.
Yeah, Puka Nacua, by the way, the Rams, a lot of the Rams people are talking about how much they think really he'll fit with Sean McVay there, by the way, which doesn't surprise me. I think he's one of those guys who can probably be a really good NFL player if he stays healthy for a while.
And they still won 8 games last year. I mean, even though it didn't feel like they probably did, or maybe it does, but to me, I don't know. I kind of walked away thinking that they had had a bad year. Maybe 8 was a disappointment because of what you had coming back, but yeah, they still won 8 games. Yeah. So
number 2, Casey Thompson at FAU, and out of Nebraska into FAU after his run at Texas as well. Back with Tom Herman. I think it'll probably work out well for him there. Knows the system, knows Tom Herman, all of that. It just, I don't think I would have ever pegged this guy to be a journeyman at first. I thought he was going to have a much better career arc than he has.
But he has. Man, he's put up some numbers.
He's put up, and it just hasn't worked out. Now, he's going to play with Tom Herman, who you could argue was the reason his career didn't start out well, because Tom Herman's offense was not consistently productive because of the fact that everything runs through the quarterback, completely, and not,
through the quarterback completely. You're talking about the run game
through the quarterback, as opposed to using the other athletes you have on the field. And then when you have a rough day as a quarterback, you have no other options because he gets so myopic there. But I think this will work out fine. But he is maybe the biggest surprise on this list to me, as a guy who just did not work out at 2 spots. And Nebraska, just got caught up in a coaching change, and they wanted more competition and brought in who I'll tell you is the next. No, they didn't.
Matt Rule handpicked Sims, to come be his quarterback, and Casey Thompson. That was just a matter of time, but he also couldn't go through spring, and so that didn't help him any.
Yeah,
I always have thought He's a pretty good quarterback. Can he lead you to a championship? I don't know. But I guess the history says no. But I've always thought this guy's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a bad quarterback by any means. I think he can probably win a lot of games at Florida Atlantic, and Tom Herman should be a great fit. That little reunion of sorts should be, totally unforeseen. Them ended up in Boca Raton together, but I think it'll benefit both guys. It'll give Herman a solid quarterback to start his tenure off with. But yeah, I mean, you talk about Thompson maybe running too much, which would have been year 3 with Texas because he didn't play a ton of the years prior to that. But he didn't do any of the sort at Nebraska. I mean, maybe that was a sack yardage, actually, that just eliminated his rushing yards.
Got beat
that probably
up
was
quite
some
a
of
bit.
it, but, he was not as much of that as you might have thought at Nebraska. That could be for a variety of reasons.
And
but
also who's around him in Nebraska.
No, absolutely. But, I think he's a good player, and he should be great at FAU.
Yep. Number 1. Jeff Sims at Nebraska.
You're a hater.
He was a very highly rated recruit, and he went to Georgia Tech, who, I mean, he had to fight through injuries and all that, and now he's with a staff that I know was probably in on recruiting him, and Jeff Collins was the coach that signed him at Georgia Tech, and Matt Rule knows Jeff Collins really well because of their time at Temple together, so I'm sure there's a lot of overlap there. And Jeff Sims had his moments, but like most of Georgia Tech would have these times where it's like, oh, look, they're in a 3-game winning streak. And then they've got, Clemson and NC State and Virginia back-to-back or something like that, and they lose 3 games in a row. It just didn't work out for them. But Jeff Sims, to me, is one of the more intriguing guys in the country, and in the right system, with the right talent around him, can probably win some games. But this is, and Matt Rule knows this, but a jump from playing sporadically at Georgia Tech to being a starting quarterback in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It's going to be a jump for Jeff Sims.
I watched the spring game. I'm not a big spring game guy. Heck, when I go to watch Baylor, I can't remember what I watched, but he seems to have kind of a little bit of that, what you want as your guy if he can stay healthy. He takes a lot of hits. He's a bigger body, but, I have not really seen him consistently enough. But Rule watched him. He was at Carolina, paid attention to him, handpicked him, and we'll see.
He's got a big arm. They're going to run pro-style offense. That should suit him well. I think he just really needs to cut down on turnovers. And I know that could really probably be a golden rule for every quarterback, but sometimes you do have to, mention that because that's part of the problem is you got a guy with a lot of turnovers. So, cut down on the picks and, big arm, presence and experience. And I think that, if you're somebody going into a program that's got big expectations, not that they're thinking they're going to win the Big Ten anytime soon, but obviously there's expectations that you're there to change it. You could definitely do far worse as far as bringing in a guy than Jeff Sims as your first big quarterback recruit. So, I think that was a good move by Rule and should work out well, but we will see.
Wish that receiver was back who had a really good year.
Trey
LSU.
Palmer.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He ended up having a really, really good year for a team that was very anemic for the most part. That would be nice to have him back. All right, Graham Bronstein, Missouri Holla, Levi Caraway, Baylor Holla, and then Emery's out remotely, but he's working on Sports Tonight, 365 Sports Tonight at 10:30 and presented by Rooftop Innovations. Hot off the press. Can you stop that for 1 second, Garrett, just for a second? Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram. This is through July 10th. All retired military gets an extra $2,000 on top of all the cash incentives, including specially incentive interest rates. Like, for example, the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo, $3,500 plus 2.9% for 72 months. So that now means $5,500 in cash values and the 2.9 for 72 months. Thanks to Ted Teague for sending me that. Loop 340 east of 84, Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. For Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak. Have a great night. Good night, 365 Sports.